My psycho ex refuses to move out of my house, claiming that she would make a false police report against me if I ever did try to make her leave, as she planned on squatting in my house indefinitely. So I decided to get some revenge by moving all of her stuff out of my house into a storage unit, all while she was on vacation with one of her girlfriends. And I'm honestly so satisfied by the way this worked out because this caused her so many problems in the long run. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had broken up with my ex about a year prior to this event, but she wouldn't move out. One excuse after another for a solid year, until one day, amidst yet another argument, she finally admitted that her plan was to stay indefinitely and said that she was going to claim I was domestically mistreating her if I did anything about it. That weekend, she decided to go out for one of her weekend vacations with a girlfriend, so I took advantage of the 48 hours I had, and I got to work reserving a storage unit and rented a moving truck. I worked around the clock loading that truck multiple times, only sleeping a few hours that entire weekend. She had hoarding tendencies that I had long turned a blind eye to, since, I had to pick my battles, and it had gotten pretty far out of control. Not only did I make dozens of trips, but the storage unit itself was almost too small for it all. It was truly amazing how much crap she managed to pack floor to ceiling in multiple rooms, closets, and the garage, despite living in the same house together for so long. So I made sure her laptop was the very first thing in the storage unit all the way in the back corner, followed by all of her clothing, and yes, she had a lot, then furniture, then all the meaningless hoarded junk. By the time I was done, that storage unit was packed floor to ceiling, to the point that I had to really Tetris the last couple of loads in there just to get the door shut. She was right at the end of a semester of school, and not only needed the laptop first thing the next week, but she was also planning on leaving for a cross-state road trip to visit family, and everything she needed for that was at the very back. Now, from what I heard, it took her and another friend the better part of the week to find that laptop and repack the storage unit itself. She even missed some important deadlines at school and delayed her family trip by a whole week, which, by the way, messed up other plans and wasted a few PTO days at work to boot. But the best part came months later. You see, when she first came back from that little weekend vacation, I had asked her to sign a receipt to receive the key to the storage unit. Well, she immediately refused, threw a fit, tried to steal my dog even though she failed to do so, tried to break into my house while I was gone, but then came back with 6 cops in her wake. Now, even to this day, I don't know what lies she told them to get that entourage, but after I explained my side of the story, they realized it was a civil matter and very quickly left. The receipt I asked her to sign was simple enough in that I offered to pay for the storage unit for 6 months if she just signed it on that day, but since she didn't, I removed my card from the account and put the unit in her name. Well, the only problem was, the card she then put on file with them was an authorized user card linked to my account, which I promptly canceled. So then she missed enough payments on the storage unit that they locked her out, and she was never able to get the rest of her stuff before they presumably auctioned all of it off. Okay, first of all, your ex is completely insane. You mean to tell me that she's like, oh, I'm never leaving, and if you try to make me leave, I'm gonna get you arrested. And when I say she was gonna try and claim like domestic mistreatment, I really hope you understand what I'm inferring there, because it is seriously messed up that she would say that. So I think the way the original poster handled this is probably the only way this could have gotten done. Like seriously, what kind of psychopath would treat people that way? She was willing to make up a lie just to get you in trouble. Also, she wouldn't move out even though you guys broke up. But you know what? I love the way you did it because you really did cause some problems for her. She had to rearrange that entire storage unit. All of the crap that she actually needed was in the back of the storage unit. Like, that is hilarious to me, and I honestly don't blame you for doing this. So yeah, hopefully you don't have to deal with your ex anymore because that lady sounds like a complete psychopath. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled teacher thought that she knew my name better than I did, refusing to listen to me when I said what my name actually was, and instead assuming that I was making it up and trying to call myself something else. So I got revenge by making her look really dumb by bringing in my birth certificate just to prove her wrong, and I've truly never felt better about putting somebody in their place in my life. Here's what happened. So this was years ago when I was in secondary school and around 15 years old. We used to have form in the morning where the teacher would take the register and let you know about anything going on in the school before you went to your other classes. And my form tutor was a miserable old woman that was a renowned jerk. There are several stories I could tell about her, but this one is the only time I got the better of her. My parents named me a shortened version of a posh-sounding name, and for the sake of the story, let's say they called me Alex, which is short for Alexander, even though that's not my real name. Whenever this woman would call my name, she would always use Alexander instead of Alex. Now, I brought up to her her that it was not my name multiple times, and I asked her to please call me Alex as that's what my parents called me. Well, when I said this, she would always get angry. She would always say, "Don't be stupid. No one is named Alex. Your name is Alexander. Alex is just what you want to be called." And no matter how much I insisted, she refused. At one point, she gave me a detention for asking her to call me by my correct name. Well, the school called to let my parents know that I had been given detention for arguing with my teacher. When I told my parents I was supposed to have detention for asking my teacher to call me the right name, they were definitely not happy. So they gave me a trump card to use against her. They gave me my birth certificate. The next day when she called my name, I once again told her that wasn't my name. And when she said that I was going to get another detention, I pulled out my birth certificate, I put it down on her desk, and I said to her, "My birth certificate says my name is Alex, so that's what you will call me. Thank you." Well, when I did that, the look on her face was priceless. And it was from then on that she started calling me my actual name for the rest of my time I was in her class. And it truly felt great to get back at this stupid teacher because she seriously was the absolute worst. Okay, I really like this story because I cannot stand teachers who acted like this when I was in school. You all know the type of teacher from like high school or middle school or even like college that acted so unbelievably obnoxious. They thought they knew everything and they literally talked down to you at any chance they got. And this is just another prime example where they thought, "Oh yeah, I know better than you. You don't know anything. You're just a dumb kid." So the fact that your parents basically said, "Okay, here's your birth certificate. Go prove her wrong, cause violence, do crime." Like that in my opinion is great, and seriously, I love the fact that you put her in her place because her attitude in my opinion was completely uncalled for, as you definitely did not deserve that first detention. I gave my ex-boyfriend a surprise he will never forget after I moved out a week early, not only taking all of my belongings, but making sure that anything I bought in that house, regardless of how mundane or small it might be, I took it with me just in spite of this massive jerk. And I honestly feel so good getting back at my toxic ex. Here's what happened. Okay, so my ex and I were planning on separating as it was a very toxic relationship. He was a controlling narcissist, and I had been under his thumb for far too long. I was in counseling, and my therapist and I mapped out the best way for me to get out, although the details of the plan were my idea. I got a better paying job, and I opened my own bank account, and that was a huge fight in and of itself, and I figured out where to go. He knew I was leaving, and he even went through the house and marked all the things that were his that I couldn't take with me, which was basically everything that we purchased throughout the 13 years together. And also, I was only allowed to take the items that I came with when we moved in together. He planned to take the day off from work on a particular Saturday and would be there to supervise my move to ensure that I only took what he approved of. And that's where my plan began. The Saturday before his planned date, I scheduled a move after he left work. He worked long days, so I knew I could pack and leave before he returned. About an hour after he left, my friends and family showed up with boxes and tape and a moving truck. And I even parked it out back so my neighbors didn't see any of it. In less than 4 hours, all of my belongings were packed and on the truck, and I pretty much stuck to his rules because I didn't want reminders of our life in my future. Before I left in the truck, I went through and I grabbed every single towel, washcloth, every sheet and toilet paper and paper towel, as well as every napkin and tissue I could possibly find. I mean, I took anything and everything that he could wipe his butt with or his nose with. And I took the carpet runner that was at the front door, leaving the tape that secured it to the floor. That way he knew as soon as he walked in that I definitely was gone. So imagine just coming home from work after a long day, expecting one thing and finding another, and then not having a single tissue or toilet paper to use. My best revenge was building a happy new life, but that day made me feel oh so good. Oh man, this is such a good story because I love the fact that you got back at this guy. You totally flipped the script on his head in a way that he probably will never forget. Like you pulled a fast one, and I love the fact that you did that because this guy was clearly trying to scam you. So truly good for you for getting back at your ex-boyfriend because this guy sounds like an absolute nightmare. And the fact that he wanted to like supervise you moving out, in my opinion, shows how toxic he truly is. An entitled neighbor demands that my friend's son give up half of his money to her daughter, claiming that this would help him prepare for the real world and that this would be the right thing to do. And we're all quite literally blown away by this request. Here's what happened. One of my best friends is a married father of 3. For the sake of the story, we'll call him John. Though highly intelligent and with a university degree, John decided to follow his more artistic side when choosing a career path, and accordingly, he doesn't make as much money as he probably could. While his family isn't struggling in any way, they do have to be a bit more careful with their finances. Accordingly, their children don't receive any sort of allowance. If the kids need or want something, they have to ask. John then decides, together with a wife, whether they will get it. Now, the oldest one of the kids, who's a 16-year-old male, we'll call him Ryan for the sake of the story, recently voiced his desire to go out with his friends every now and then. Now, John thought that this was understandable, but funding such escapades on a regular basis would be quite the burden on the family finances. Now, I heard about this little conundrum by chance and suggested that Ryan could get a part-time job. After 2 weeks, I received a very nice thank you letter, as Ryan had secured part-time employment with a rather popular food chain. So Ryan now makes his own money, which he can spend however he wants. And John made it clear that Ryan's grades aren't allowed to slip. And at this point, everybody was happy. But unfortunately, this state of affairs didn't last too long. The apartment building in which John's family lives has a bit of a communal vibe, with people pitching in to take care of each other's needs. It's not a bad situation. Neighbors do laundry for each other or watch smaller kids, so everyone can adjust to their individual work schedules. It is pretty neat. Due to this situation, it didn't take long for one of the female residents, we'll call her Rita, to notice that Ryan suddenly had more cash to spare. Shortly afterwards, she also found out about Ryan's work after school and weekend activities. And it was here that Rita came to see John, talking about how her own daughter, who is the same age as Ryan, could also use some spending money. Now, John initially assumed that she wanted to know how Ryan got the job and some advice on how to apply, but unfortunately, he was dead wrong. Rita wanted, and I'm not kidding, for John to instruct Ryan to split his earnings with her daughter 50-50. Her reasoning was simple, straightforward, and absolutely crazy. She said that girls shouldn't have to do something as mundane as cleaning in a fast food joint, and that simply handing over the money to her daughter would be good for Ryan, as he would learn to share and take care of others around him. And she tried to phrase this as some kind of like preparing for the real world kind of thing. Well, when John realized that Rita was serious, he told her straight up that this wasn't going to happen. She could either fund her daughter directly or let her get part-time work with Ryan. And John also pointed out that fast food isn't the only game in town. Well, believe it or not, Rita took great offense at this and lectured John in his own living room, saying how he would regret this once Ryan turns out to be a greedy and selfish adult with no social skills. John then took this as his cue to ask Rita politely yet firmly to leave his home. Ever since then, Rita has apparently engaged in a series of passive-aggressive behavior patterns, but nothing that John or Ryan can't handle. And as of right now, this is where things are, with John informing me that he and Ryan decided to simply ignore her for the time being, because honestly, this entire situation is honestly insane. Wow, you have to be a special version of stupid to actually make this kind of request. Like seriously, what were they thinking? Did they really think that this person would be like, oh yeah, Ryan can give half his money to you? That's totally fine. In fact, I encourage it. Like what kind of freeloader crap is that? Are you kidding me right now? If Rita's daughter wants to make money, guess what? You're not gonna get it out of Ryan. And the fact that she tried to be like, oh yeah, this will help you prepare for the real world. It's like, no it won't. What are you talking about? This doesn't prepare anybody for anything, because all this does is prove that Rita and her daughter are potential like moochers, and they would happily take money out of someone else's pocket for literally nothing. So yeah, that lady was completely out of her mind for asking that, and I'm honestly still blown away that they asked that in the first place. Am I the jerk for slamming the door on my neighbor's face after he got aggressive and angry at us, claiming that we had broken the elevator? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, this doesn't take place in the United States, but rather I'm from a European country. I'm a 19-year-old female and I'm a student living in a city 2 hours away from my hometown in a shared apartment with 3 other roommates. Let's call them Naomi, Lisa, and Emily, all of them 19 years old. We all get along well and we are very close, so we live perfectly fine together and we don't cause any trouble. We also live in the 5th floor. The building's elevator is one of those old ones that you have to manually open the door, get inside, close the door, and when you press the floor button that you're going to, the interior door closes and goes to that floor. As a safety measure, the elevator won't move until the manual door is completely closed. But the problem is that it's so old that sometimes it doesn't fully close. So when someone gets off on one floor, they sometimes leave it half closed on accident, and the elevator gets stuck in that floor until someone fully shuts the door. And this is where the real issue comes into play. This happened 2 days ago. Naomi and I were having lunch in the kitchen before going to class, with Lisa in her room probably gaming, and Emily had left early for university in the morning. Well, suddenly someone knocks at the door. When we both go to check, we find an elderly man standing there, and right then and there, he automatically starts scolding us for leaving the elevator door open. And yes, it was half open. He yelled that he has some kind of heart problem or something like that, and that we were very inconsiderate. Mind you, we haven't seen this man in our entire lives, so we were kind of shocked and pretty uncomfortable. We tried telling him that maybe it was the neighbors living in front of us that left it open, but he denied it, saying he knocked at their door but they didn't answer. So they're probably not home, and so it absolutely is our fault. Now, as a bit of clarification, I was the only one to leave the apartment that morning, but when I returned, the elevator was stuck on the 7th floor, so I had to take the stairs home, meaning meaning that it couldn't have been us. The argument was already tense, but then Naomi accidentally let out a nervous giggle, and this man absolutely flipped out. He called her the B word, started screaming obscenities, hitting the elevator door, calling us every cuss word under the sun, and looked like he was about to lay hands on us. At this point, Naomi was getting very scared, and I wasn't just gonna put up with his bullcrap, so I said to him, you know what? No. I pulled Naomi inside, I slammed the door in his face, leaving him screaming for a couple of minutes until he finally left. And you know what? I was pretty pissed off for a while, but we then told Lisa about it and she sided with us. And now, looking back, it did kind of feel bad, but everyone says that I was right. So seriously, did I do anything wrong? Because at this point, I'm not really sure what to think. No, you did not do anything wrong. This guy was acting crazy. The second anybody starts like slamming their hand against the elevator, as well as swearing at me and acting like a psychopath, that's the biggest red flag that I would ever need to be like, okay, I need to get out of this situation one way or another. There's no reasoning with someone like that, and honestly, I think you did the right thing by slamming the door in his face. Because for starters, you guys didn't do anything wrong. You're literally just living your life in your apartment, and then in comes this old jerk who's trying to be like, wow, you did this, I can't believe you. Like, that is so annoying, it's not even funny. So no, you did the right thing, and I think you really did protect you and your roommate, because this guy was clearly unhinged, and who knows what he could have done in a fit of rage. An entitled Karen constantly makes fun of my weight, as well as judges the groceries that I purchase. And now, after dealing with this nearly a dozen times, I'm honestly not sure how to handle this, and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so there's this woman living in my apartment building that has decided to snark at me every time I see her. I don't know if she treats others this way, because all of our interactions are from our parking garage spots to the elevators. Anytime I have a bag of groceries or takeout, and she and I are walking to the elevator, she says to me, it must be nice to be able to afford that. And she says this in the snottiest, almost snarl voice you can think of. The first time this happened, I looked at her and I said, you can't buy a loaf of bread? She responded by saying, of course I can. I'm just concerned for your health, that's all. I then said, well, maybe start with that concern then, rather than getting snarky about my finances. Now, for a bit of background, I've been fat ever since I was in the 3rd grade. I overheard my doctor tell my mom that she should put me on a diet, and my mom said, it's his own fault, and I'm not going to do anything special for him. My mom was also very controlling and always about the shame and blame. I went from being a slim child in kindergarten to 103 pounds when I started the 3rd grade. I weighed 225 pounds in 10th grade, 250 at the end of high school, and 370 pounds when I was 44. Therapy and weight loss programs came next, and now I'm at 265 at the age of 56, and I'm still getting it down slowly. This woman's accosting me in this post context sounds like my mother, both in the shaming snark and then faking care. And that really doesn't help my appraisal of the Karen. This unwanted interaction has occurred 8 times in the last year. The only occurrences not being a harpy were when her partner was with her in the parking garage. Then she said nothing at all and was almost meek, except for her side-eyeing me while her partner was leading to the elevator. And I'm glad I'm only 2 floors up from the garage. I still have no idea what makes her do this. Although when I respond, she just stops and stares ahead as if I wasn't there. My comments where snark about her opinion mean nothing, or the quiet whisper when I told her I had been unemployed and had no money for several years. I was once very poor, so I enjoy being able to buy what I want now. The rest were just my head turning to look at her and then ignoring her. Weirdly, she always said goodbye to me in a pleasant voice, and I replied in kind. But regardless, this lady's obnoxious and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, this parking garage Karen is absolutely out of line. It's really unfair that she's acting this way because it literally could not be more obvious that she's judging you. She's only pretending to care, but in reality, she's being a massive jerk. So in my opinion, and this is what I would do, I would absolutely call her on her garbage the next time she says anything like this. Like flat out tell her, okay, this is unacceptable and you're not going to talk to me like that. Because seriously, the way she's talking is so wrong. She has no right to judge you this way, and in my opinion, I don't think that you should ever have to take that. My entitled friend decides to sell off a laptop that I literally had just got done fixing just for him. So I decided to change his avatar and desktop background into something that is incredibly embarrassing, thus humiliating him as soon as he brought the laptop into a pawn shop. Here's what happened. Okay, so my friend is computer illiterate. Now you might be wondering how bad this might be. Well, he complains when I ask him to email me a link to something because he doesn't know that you can copy and paste a URL, and instead he types each character of the URL out in the email. Anyways, he bought a rather nice laptop from a pawn shop that he used to work at. He had told me once that if someone wants to pawn a computer, they have to turn it on, log into it with a username to prove that it's theirs. And whenever he's short on cash, off he goes to the pawn shop. And he had been at this particular one so often that he got a job there. On all his past computers, he had gotten viruses and hijackers from going to adult websites. So So he asked me if I could wipe the hard drive, which his pawn shop never did when buying computers, and install a firewall, antivirus, keylogger detector, anti-malware, and other useful programs that he liked. Well, I made that laptop bulletproof. I added anti-adware, LibreOffice, photo editing programs, video editing software, etc. And it took some time getting it just right. I even imaged the drive, cleaned it, and ran some benchmark tests. The day I was to return it to him, he mentioned that he was hard up for some money. And knowing him as I did, he was most likely going to pawn that laptop that I spent a lot of time getting ready for him. So the day I returned it, I added a login avatar and desktop background just to embarrass him. I went to his house with it and he suggested that we go out for a cheap lunch. He drove and also suddenly put the laptop in the seat behind him without even turning it on. And not surprisingly, our first stop was the pawn shop. He asked me to wait while he went inside with the laptop, and I could see the intake counter from the car. So he placed the laptop on the counter and the worker asked him to turn it on and log in. Well, the look on his face was well worth the effort. And let's just say the avatar was incredibly inappropriate and the desktop wallpaper was just as inappropriate. He looked out of the car and shot me the most evil look, but I just laughed my butt off and gave him a thumbs up. His former coworkers were standing there smirking and he looked quite embarrassed. And after that, I was never asked to work on his computers ever again. Oh wow, this really is funny to me because this guy absolutely deserved this. You mean to tell me that after you put all this time and energy into like fixing up this laptop, this guy's gonna turn around and be like, okay, I'm hard up for money, time to sell it off. Like, what are you doing, man? That's so unfair. If I was the person who worked on that laptop, I would be super pissed off. I don't think I would do anything like this per se, but I would definitely be very upset and probably never help them again. But either way, I find the situation incredibly hilarious. My dad stole money off of my debit card and has been using my name to try and get food stamps for himself. And now I'm being gaslit by my family to not say anything. So the title says it all. My dad stole money off my debit card and I found out that he's been receiving food stamps in my name. I also wanted to find out if he had been getting anything else in my name, and because some people online suggested it, I wanted to make sure he didn't try to get money from me on his taxes. I was talking to my mom about everything, and it seemed like she kept trying to make excuses for my dad. She would say stuff like, well, maybe he felt like you owed him, or even, I would never have my dad locked up no matter what happened. She said it took her years to call the police on my dad even though he used to beat her. I got upset and ended the conversation. My aunt said she was most concerned with my dad using my social security number to get credit or other things in my name because my dad gets a disability check, and I guess people on disability aren't supposed to be able to file taxes or claim people on their taxes or something like that. But my mom called my aunt and told her that she and my dad had been taking turns claiming me on their taxes for years. She said she claimed me last year, so she was pretty sure my dad had claimed me this year. She said my dad could go to prison for this, and she didn't want him to go to prison for claiming his child on his taxes. My mom told me that what my dad did with the food stamps was wrong, but that I left my dad's house without giving him anything. So maybe this was just his way of trying to get something for letting me stay in his house. She said that I had been rebelling against her by not trying to go to church, and that I needed to search my soul or whatever that means to see if I want to come back. All of this, by the way, has to do with the fact that I'm not straight. She said even if I really am gay, then how could it hurt to repent and go to church and try to be straight just for her? She said she actually talked to my dad, and he told her that I had been rebellious and disrespectful to him, and that is why he kept getting in my face and screaming at me and insulting me, as if that's a good excuse. She said that my dad had never been like that with me before, and I need to think about what I did to contribute to that and take responsibility for my part in everything. And apparently I needed to think about how my dad felt knowing that his little girl was not the person he thought she was. My mom said that my dad was almost in tears and that he was just as hurt as me, and he feels bad about the food stamps and taking money off of my debit card, and that my dad is a really good person deep down, and if he doesn't have a temper, she would still be with him. The only thing he ever did wrong when they were together was hit her, and that he has never and would never hit me or my brother or my sister. Then she said that if I didn't press charges against my dad, that she and my dad would pay me when they received their income tax refunds. And I'm no lawyer, but that definitely sounds like a bribe. She said if my issue is that he stole from from me, then him paying me back should settle everything. And if I want him to go to jail, then I'm just being vengeful. And I need to think about what it will do to my brother and sister if their dad is in prison. She said I need to think about if it's worth it to hurt my brother and sister just to hurt my dad. I cried while I was talking to my mom. I cried for a long time afterwards. I found out a lot, but especially two things. One is that even though my mom talks so much garbage about my dad when they split up, it seems like my mom still loves my dad. Even after she knew that he had been yelling at me, scaring me, had threatened me, and stolen from me, apparently she still talked to him and she still sympathized with him. My mom would never let me live with her because I'm gay, but if she thought my dad would never hit her again, she would be with him. The other thing I know now is that my mom cares about my dad a lot more than she cares about me. It's weird because up until now, that probably wouldn't have bothered me, but I didn't expect her to have more sympathy for my dad than me after knowing that my dad has threatened me and stolen from me. I can't imagine never having anything to do with my mom again, but right now I don't want anything to do with her. I don't know if that's fair or rational, but that's how I feel. I don't know what to do. I think my dad should go to jail for what he did, but I don't want to hurt my brother and sister, and I know they would hurt if my dad went to jail, and it would hurt more knowing that I'm the one that put him in jail. And my aunt pointed out that I worked most of last year, so I could file taxes myself unless my dad did claim me this year. My mom said they would pay me, but for one thing, how can I trust that? And I don't know if I want money that they are trying to give me just because my dad doesn't want to get in trouble for wronging me. The other thing is, I already contacted the police about him stealing the money off of my card, and he is already being investigated for receiving food stamps in my name. My mom doesn't think he's going to jail for that, but I lived with my dad for about a month as an adult, and that was the first time I've lived with him since him and my mom were together when I was a kid, and he was getting food stamps in my name like he was me. So I don't know if my mom knows something I don't, but I honestly think he's going to be in a lot of trouble for that, and I found out about that accidentally. So it's not like I woke up one day with a vendetta against my dad. And what if my dad tries to steal from my brother and sister like this? What if I'm protecting them by pursuing this? Am I wrong for wanting my dad to go to jail? Should I just let everything go since my mom said that she and my dad would pay me back? I'm not going to have anything to do with my dad no matter what, but should I keep trying to make this relationship work with my mom? I did finally let my aunt know how bad I think I need a therapist, and she said she will definitely make sure that happens, so that's a good thing. Am I wrong? Am I a bad person in this situation? What should I do? You are not a bad person in this situation. You have terrible parents. They are gaslighting you. Yes, you absolutely need to pursue this with the police. Do not let them fool you. They are just trying to make sure that your dad does not go to jail. They don't care about you for a second. This money they want to try and give you is just hush money. They want to bribe you to get you to shut up. And no, you are not hurting your sister or your brother by putting your dad in jail. You are helping them. They do not need that kind of person in their life. And sure, maybe they won't understand now, but the older they get, the more they will see the lying scumbag that their dad actually was. You cannot steal from somebody and then impersonate them and basically steal their identity and expect to get away with that. There is no amount of money possible that would allow me to let someone get away with that. And if I were you, I wouldn't put up with that for 1 second. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for exposing my dad for stealing money after he tried shifting the blame to me? My grandfather passed away last year, leaving his apartment and his money all in cash in an envelope to my dad and his younger brother and sister. Now the thing is, me and my dad are the only ones still living in the same city. My aunt lives almost 5 hours away in another city, and my uncle lives in Belgium. At the time, my dad was temporarily working abroad and couldn't come home because of his contract, and my uncle couldn't come back because of restrictions. I managed to get a head start on funeral arrangements until my aunt came in and took over. The money my grandfather left covered the funeral expenses, and there was still a great sum left, which they decided to leave to my dad's house to keep paying for the taxes and bills, especially for the empty apartment. They didn't want to cancel the utilities for some reason, although no one was living there anymore. Shortly after my aunt went back home, I was left in charge of the money until my dad came back home. I did as they wish. I dealt with the bills and kept every receipt as proof. 3 months later, my dad came back and I thought he would take over, but he said I should continue doing that since I was already used to it. I didn't mind and I just kept doing it. Now to the problem at hand. My dad started supposedly borrowing money from the envelope whenever he was short on cash, saying he'll put it back later. It was never much, maybe around $4 at a time, but still he did it many times, so it added up. Meanwhile, I moved out from home, but I still kept tabs on the things from the empty apartment, with the money envelope being at my father's, and again, I kept every receipt. It was all good until my aunt came to visit and asked to see the envelope. My aunt and I were the only ones who knew how much money was left after the funeral, but I don't think my dad ever asked. When I showed her the receipts, she saw it didn't add up and asked my dad for an explanation. I then just realized he probably didn't tell his siblings about taking money. It's been almost a year since the funeral, and after my calculations, I spent on bills around 7% of the money, but 15% was missing now. I wanted to ask him if he put it back at all, but before I opened my mouth, he started blaming me for taking money for myself on top of the bills, and I honestly could not believe it. He and I never had a stable relationship. He would always blame me for missing stuff that he found shortly after, or things that he did but was too drunk to remember that he did them. But to accuse me of this, I really honestly didn't see coming. I told my aunt the truth, and fortunately she believed me, mostly because my father's behavior isn't really a secret. After some scolding, my aunt and uncle entrusted me with the envelope to keep doing what I was doing and basically command my dad to pay back everything. He argued that it was his inheritance as well, so he had the right, but to this logic, for every dollar he took, the others had the same right. She said they all agreed to not touch the money for anything other than expenses for the apartment, and he broke that agreement. After my aunt left, my dad and I had a fight about how dare I expose him like that, in which I replied, "How dare you blame me for this?" It's been 2 weeks in which I haven't had any contact with him, and relatives and family have all found out about what he did. The majority were on my side, while a few outliers said I should have just played along. My defense is simple. I won't be accused of something I didn't do. So what do you think? Am I the jerk? You are not the jerk in the situation. I would have done the same thing. There is no way you're going to be blamed for stealing money. That is a massive thing to blame someone for. Your father honestly needs to take responsibility for the way he acts and to stop trying to gaslight you into taking the blame. And forget those family members that said you should have just played along. That is honestly ridiculous. There is no reason you should be required to play along and try and cover for someone who clearly would never do the same for you. So good for this person for standing up for themselves, and thankfully they saved some face, unlike their father. My entitled ex-friend tries to invite themselves into my home, but then turns really scary when I tell them no. I had a friend, and this is past tense as you can tell, that I had known for just about 40 years. We had kept in contact over the years, and it was nice, until it turned really strange. I currently live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a city. As part of my lease with a rental company, I agreed to never have overnight guests, like at all. 0 guests no matter what. About 6 months ago, a friend of mine asked if they might come stay with me whilst on holiday. At the time, I was dealing with my mom dying in the hospital, while also having another family member who had the plague that's still going around, and I also started to pack to move to my new place. I examined that I would love to see them, but at the time, I could not accommodate them in my home due to the above reasons. They got incredibly upset and ended the conversation. In fact, they ghosted me for about 3 months after that. Last week, this friend contacted me out of the blue, and we were having a nice chat until the end of the conversation when they again mentioned coming to my home on holiday. And again, I said I would enjoy seeing them for a visit, but I could not accommodate them, this time due to my new lease not allowing overnight guests. This friend, again, got incredibly upset and went on a bit of a rant. I tried to explain that it is a new apartment and I don't want to break the rules, but they were still very upset about the whole thing. Now this is where things took a definite turn for the bizarre. After a 15-minute rant about my not being able to have them stay, my now former friend suddenly switched gears and started rattling on about society coming to an end and the dark forces taking over the country, and how I was either with the friend and his group or company or cult, or I was against them. They kept insisting that I needed to join them in order to prove my loyalty. Crazy? Maybe. Entitled? I think so. More than slightly terrifying? Absolutely yes. I have since blocked them on all forms of contact, and I am actually very relieved that they don't know my new address. So am I paranoid, or does this seem more than a bit strange to you? No, that is very, very strange. If an old friend came up to me and said that I need to join their cult, otherwise the dark forces are going to take over, first off, I would probably try and get more information from them just so I could mock them later, and then I would say no. That's just strange no matter who you are. And the fact that they were so adamant about trying to get to your house and spend time with you and be at your home specifically is so strange to me. Because who does that? Like seriously, that's just creepy. So I don't blame you for cutting this person off, and blocking them is probably the only way to get away from them and their creepy, weird cult. I found out that my boyfriend of 3 years has a history of cheating, but I love him so much. Should I still trust him? We have lived together for 2 years of the 3. We want to have kids and to get married, but he said before we do, he had to tell me something. So he dropped the heaviest news I could have possibly anticipated. I never had any reason to distrust him, so I had no idea. I have an 8-year-old and they're so close and really good together. He got married at 21, and after a year, he found out she cheated on him the entire time. He said he didn't want his marriage to fail, but told her he forgave her and tried to justify it to sweep it under the rug. He said he thought about it every day for 6 years while it lasted, but they were still close and best friends until they grew apart the last 4 months. Shortly after it happened, he thought he would feel better if he got even by trying to cheat as well. So he did end up cheating. He felt guilty and then he got sick, but later told himself it wasn't as real because he did it out of spite and she did it for real. Anyway, this started a cycle of him cheating for 5 years every few months. She never did again as far as he knows. He started short flings and then ended them. So he didn't just cheat on his ex, but these other girls who thought he was with them as well. The next relationship lasted 4 years. 8 months in, he found out she cheated on her previous ex. Up till that point, he was loyal. That day, he said he cheated on her to get even again. And that started the cycle back up, where he would cheat to calm his fear of being cheated on. And she never found out. But she ended up cheating on him again with a coworker. And after she confessed this to him, they ended up breaking up as well. He was in therapy for 2 years and started taking antidepressants towards the end of his last relationship. He says he's never cheated on me or even thought about it, and knows the right thing to do would be to end the relationship if he didn't trust his partner. He says he can't excuse what he's done, and he also said something about struggling with self-hatred for cheating when the whole reason he was doing it was because they did. What should I do? I'm sorry, but this is really sketchy for me. I understand that this guy is really good with your kid, but this guy cheated on every relationship that he has mentioned. It doesn't even make sense to me or even matter that they did it out of spite. The fact that he cheated is absolutely a game changer for me, and in my opinion is a big deal breaker. I would not trust that for a second. You want to get married, you want to have kids together, and he is just now, after so many years, deciding to tell you that, hey, I've cheated with my previous partners. Not once, but twice. Oh, by the way, I would do this for months on end with multiple women. Who's to say he wouldn't do that to you as well? The opportunity for this to happen is just too big because his past is proving that he could do it. So in my opinion, I think you really need to be careful with how you go about this, because if you do decide to stick with him, a lot of that baggage and a lot of the things he's done in the past to other women could very easily happen to you too. And that could honestly be devastating. My ex-girlfriend is suddenly stepping back into my life, and I don't know if she's just stringing me along. She knows that I am still in love with her. She has told me she does not love me romantically, but loves me as a friend, a very good friend. She did not tell me that she was in a relationship for the past 18 months, even though we spoke almost every single day. When we met up, all she's done was talk about how great I am, and all of the negative things and all of the negative points about her current boyfriend. And this wasn't just a quick kick on how I am. It was literally, there is nobody that can make me laugh harder, or even, you're the only one that would do anything for me, blah, blah, blah. I told her that she was only telling me the negatives of her boyfriend, and she said that there is good there too. She is just sparing her feelings. She talks about how she thinks she is in love with her boyfriend, and they may live together soon. However, she says their relationship has no definition. They are not an official couple, and she doesn't know where it is heading. She certainly cannot see herself marrying him, is one thing she she made very clear. Ever since she has stepped back into my life, she has spoken a lot more to me than usual. Before, I was lucky to get her once or twice per week, maybe just a few sentences, even just in a text message. Now she calls for hours. She says she does it to give me a good start to my day. She has even planned her next meeting with me, tours of art galleries, museums, etc. Long walks, you name it. I am confused. Like, this woman says she is not into me, and I have to believe her. However, she is also at the point where it seems almost like we have a relationship again. We do the same stuff we had in a relationship, bar the intimacy. What is going on? She is 100% stringing you along. In this case, it's not about what she is saying, but rather it's about what she isn't saying. And what she isn't saying is that she probably really does want to either get back with you, or she's looking for the attention and validation that she's not getting from her current boyfriend. I mean, hey, if you want to step back into that bear trap, go for it. But there's probably a reason you two broke up. And also, if you think about it, you are still in love with her, but she does not love you. She is playing you. She's just stringing you along because she likes the attention and she likes to feel important. And that is really not fair for you, and it's not fair for her current boyfriend, who is very well getting played by you being around her. And you can bet she's probably looking for some way to cut loose from her current boyfriend just to maybe even try and get with you. Mostly because she probably thinks she probably can get away with it because you're still in love with her. So in my opinion, I think you need to find a girl who's actually going to love you for who you are and not just try to keep you around just to try and get some attention, because you can do so much better than that. My partner keeps uninviting me to things involving his friends and family, and I don't know what to do about it. So here's the deal. The relationship is incredibly new. We've only been dating for 2 months. I absolutely do not need to meet his mom anytime soon, but she happened to be visiting from out of town, and he asked me repeatedly if I would. I really like him, so of course I say yes, even though it makes me nervous to meet her so soon. She gets here and he says she's already asking about me. He reaffirms me that she's excited to meet me, and he again asks if we can do dinner at the end of the weekend. The day comes and he says that she's not ready to meet me. What does that mean? The amount of anxiety that I went through for several weeks preparing myself to meet her, and you're just gonna tell me that she's not ready? Am I being unreasonable to be offended by that? Normally, I would not have been offended by this, and honestly, probably would have been more relieved that I didn't have to meet her this early. But he built this up for weeks. So not only was my anxiety for nothing, but now I also feel rejected. Am I being crazy here? He, of course, doesn't see the issue. And to add insult to injury, there have been multiple instances of him inviting me places only to then find out that his friends just want to have a boys' night or whatever that means. And so he takes back the invitation. I politely asked him to be more thoughtful and to stop inviting me until he was sure I was welcome. The last time I finally got mad because he had me walk to the bar with him just to tell me the second we got there that it was time for me to go. And this was all after a phone call with one of his friends, I guess. Apparently his friend didn't want me there or something like that, but I flat out asked him in advance to clear it with his friends first so this doesn't happen. But apparently and obviously he didn't. So we walked to the bar together and I'm immediately sent packing. He also didn't get the issue there because I was cool with him having boys' night. And when it comes to boys' night, absolutely, do it, have fun, but just don't invite me. Am I being crazy or controlling? I know he isn't trying to hide me. He put me on social media and I did meet 2 of his friends, but I feel unwelcome in his life. And I don't understand why he doesn't see the issue with taking back these invitations so often. Should I cut my losses while it's early and just move on? What should I do? This guy is being very rude. Like, why would this guy invite you to be a part of some kind of celebration or some kind of party, or even just a meetup with friends at a bar, and then suddenly just take it back and be like, psych, you gotta go back to the car? Like, what is going on? It's super inconsiderate. Here's the thing, if you get invited somewhere, you should be able to expect that you're going to go to that said place. Suddenly having it taken back over and over and over again would put a strain on any relationship. That would drive me nuts personally. If your boyfriend seriously doesn't understand that, then maybe it might be time to look at your options. I'm not saying break up with them, but what he is doing is absolutely incredibly rude, and it is very inconsiderate. And you can either try and correct the problem or maybe just go ahead and find somebody else. An entitled parent wants to steal a Nintendo Switch from a church, but gets caught red-handed. My friend and I used to go to the same church. However, I left a number of years ago due to it turning into more of a mega church. And and stuff with the pastor's decisions not being honored by the other big heads. Because of that, there was a lot of controversy, and it became a breeding ground for Karens and entitled parents everywhere. The church was split into 3 areas, one for kids, one for teens, and one for adults. Kids and teens were on the opposite side of the building, with the adult section in the middle. While the kids section was for young kids, you would sometimes see them in the teen section before service, all of which trying to sneak in and play on the gaming consoles that they had. They had the PlayStation, they had the Wii U, but most of all, in the center of this story, they had the Nintendo Switch. They had 2 TVs, one for the PlayStation and one for the Switch, and people could play them before and after service, but they were turned off during service or maybe paused if it was a mid-smash fight or some other game. At this church, it was pretty normal for one kid, we will call this kid the entitled kid, to go to the teen area to play on the consoles when he really shouldn't have. His entitled mother was a friend of a usual churchgoer there and seemed to not care for the church at all. She was one of those, I don't go to church really because I'm spiritual types of people. She'd wait till last second to take him to the kids section, or she wouldn't pick him up at all, forcing the teen workers to find her and get her to sign him into the kids section. Church by this point had ended, and the entitled kid had ran his way from the kids section the moment he could to play on the Nintendo Switch. According to my friend, he always claimed to be the best Fortnite player. Since he was always playing Fortnite, no one else could be on the Switch. The teen pastor was a saint and put up with this kid for far too long. The kid lost in game, and the pastor asked him to go find his mom. This entitled kid started throwing a fit as he kept wanting to play, starting another game while red in the face, crying every time he would lose. He was straight up bawling, and that's when the entitled Karen of a mother finally arrived. She had some coffee and some snacks for herself in hand from the cafe, as she started to yell at the pastor, asking what happened to her child. Everyone by this point was completely fed up with the kid crying, and not wanting to leave on top of losing, so he takes the Switch out of its dock to keep playing, and that's when the pastor gets involved. The pastor says, hey, I know you want to play, but taking it out of the dock is not allowed. The Karen mother chimes in and says, hey, he's only playing his game, so shut it. He's been a good boy in service, so I let him do this afterwards, so just leave him alone. The pastor says, ma'am, this is not your home to say and do as you please. I'm in charge of the teen ministry, so I make and enforce the rules. The entitled kid is still yelling and screaming for again losing at the game, and beginning to use harsh swears as the entitled Karen mother gasps. How do you know those words? She says to her child. The kid was totally shocked. I guess he forgot that his mom was right there, and he just started saying, I don't know, all while he was audibly losing in the game. The Karen mother was overall incredibly embarrassed by her kid's words, so she took her kid's hand and began to walk away, but the Switch was still in her son's hands. The pastor moved to try and stop her, but she pretended like she didn't hear him. Thankfully, the greeters at the front entrance were there just in time to stop her before she ran off with a Nintendo Switch. After another meltdown by the kid, the mother begrudgingly gave back the Switch and then stormed out. After that, we never really saw her or the kid near the teen section again, as her kid hasn't really been to church ever since. I think one of the last places you want to try and steal something is probably in a church. How unbelievably entitled do you have to be to think that it is okay to try and take something out of a building that is as expensive as a new Nintendo Switch? I mean, that is a level of entitlement that you don't often see. And it's really unfortunate that you can obviously see that this Karen of a mother is 100% enabling this kind of behavior for her kid. He didn't learn this behavior out of nowhere. He didn't just start doing this because he thought it'd be cute. His mom most likely just gives him the Nintendo Switch with Fortnite on it and says, here, play this, let this be your babysitter. It's not quite an iPad kid, but it's pretty close. So good on the pastor for deciding to put their foot down and say, no, you're not doing that here, because that behavior was absolutely unacceptable. Today I messed up by accidentally hitting a skunk while I'm driving, telling my friend, and then they called the police. The fire department, the paramedics, and the police all showed up, and a bunch of neighbors came outside to look, as they thought that this skunk was actually a person. This happened a few years ago. I was driving in a quiet residential neighborhood late at night to get to a friend's house. Everyone on the streets had their garbage and recycling bins out, and one was knocked over with everything spilled out. I tried to dodge it, but I felt my car go over a bump. As I looked in a rearview mirror, mirror, I see something that looks like an animal. I immediately stop, and as soon as I open my door, I am immediately hit by the smell of a skunk. Once I confirm it's dead, I get back in my car and start freaking out. I've never hit anything before, and the idea that I just ended something's life really hit me hard. I called my friend to tell him I'll be a little bit late, and as soon as he picks up the line, I start bawling my eyes out. I tried to tell him what happened as best I can while I'm crying. My friend asked me if I want him to call someone, and I say yes. I'm thinking he means the city or whoever you call to report roadkill. I tell him exactly where I am, and he tells me to stay put and that he'll call me right back. Less than 10 minutes go by and I hear sirens. Shortly after, the police pull in behind me. An ambulance and some fire trucks shortly arrive after. Now, it's close to 1 in the morning and people are starting to come out of their houses and the streets are packed. Police officers are telling me to roll my windows down and start looking around my car. The paramedics and the firefighters are doing the same thing. Bear in mind the horrendous smell they're all dealing with. They get to my window and I'm still crying but extremely confused. So I start to tell them what happened and they keep asking me the same thing over and over again. Where is he? I get out and point to the skunk and all hell breaks loose. They start laughing at me, asking if I'm pranking them and telling me I committed a crime. Between their disparagements and terrible comments, I realized that they were responding to somebody passing away. I called my friend and I realized that he thought I unalived somebody. In my distressed state, all he could make out was, "Oh my god, I hit him, he's dead, oh my god," and lots of crying and swearing. The mix-up had to be explained to everyone around, including all the neighbors that came outside at 1 in the morning. The police were pissed off and gave me a very long lecture, but ultimately decided not to charge me. Here's the real kicker of this entire situation. One of the neighbors heard the story and gave me an odd look and said the skunk's been there for a few hours and that they already left a message about it. The bump that I experienced earlier was from the spilled recycling. The police get mad again and eventually yelled at me to leave. After that, I swore to myself that I would never try and call someone while I'm crying. Instead, I'll just send him a text message. This original poster's friend is an absolute moron. How do you honestly automatically assume that your friend hit somebody and that they are no longer alive without asking maybe just a few more questions? You gotta get the details before you call the police and are like, "Yep, my friend just hit somebody and that person is no longer living." Like, you've gotta make sure you're correct on that. And the worst part is this lady had to deal with the brunt end of it. The biggest lesson learned is that you should never call that friend for anything. They're clearly gonna get it wrong. If anything, that friend was just a big narc. They basically just ratted this person out for something they didn't do. Overall, this is a really funny story, and I think the original poster is probably just lucky to not be charged with some kind of crime. My dad doesn't like anime, and I don't know what to do about this. I'm a 17-year-old male. I live with my Christian parents alongside my 2 other siblings. I love to watch anime when I'm bored, and I usually use my tablet when I watch it. Unfortunately, my dad doesn't approve of it because he thinks that all anime is highly suggestive. Now, any weeb will know that that's not necessarily the case. There are anime like this, but most anime aren't like that at all. Having said that, I do watch some anime that is a little bit suggestive, but I don't watch it around my parents or siblings. They don't even know that I watch it. I don't watch any inappropriate animes around them, and usually I watch anime like Spy Family and Naruto. To make matters worse, my siblings can get away with this with no issue. The whole reason why this happened in the first place is because my dad saw me watching an anime game review for a 3DS. I don't have many friends due to being homeschooled and an unchangeable antisocial lifestyle. To those who say I should move when I'm 18, that's going to be a while due to my own disability. This has unfortunately been going on for a while, and this isn't the first time my dad has been entitled about what I watch. What should I do? I think it's very unlikely that you're going to change your dad's mind on this, and from the sounds of it, it seems like if you try and get more involved and show him about these animes and such, he's only going to get more irate and probably will not allow you even further, placing more restrictions on you. So the best advice I can give is probably just don't watch it around him. It's not like you can move out, as you said, and you don't have a lot of different friends that you can really choose from to maybe even watch it with them when you're away from home. But honestly, it probably would be good to take steps so that you can get out of your house and get in a friend group that'll understand your interests. And it's really unfortunate that your dad doesn't like anime, because there's some really good animes out there, especially Spy Family. That one is a great one, very addicting. So overall, I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully things work out for the better and you're able to enjoy anime without getting in trouble. Today I messed up by sending a call from the International Space Station to voicemail. This happened 2 days ago. A friend of mine is currently on his second mission to the ISS. I saw a call come in from my iPhone, and the caller ID said US government. I first had the thought and feeling that you would normally get when the principal calls you into their office. I thought to myself, crap, what did I do that I thought I got away with, but maybe I didn't? I was in the middle of something with a bunch of people and showed them what it said on my phone, and everyone was all, don't answer it. Between everyone's suggestion and my gut feeling of being in trouble, I sent it to voicemail. It turns out it was my buddy calling from space. I had a chance to speak to someone that wasn't on Earth and I screwed up. First thing he said in the voicemail was, you probably saw a call from the US government and turned it down. I know he'll call again, but man, I feel like an absolute idiot right now. This is a really funny story because there's actually an update to this. He goes on to say that he had an amazing experience talking to his friend. The call quality was as good as a regular phone call, but apparently there was a slight delay that made natural conversation a little bit difficult. He talked to his friend and his friend told him that he's currently flying over the western coast of Africa. The astronaut went on to talk about how fun the Soyuz was and how incredible it was to go into orbit and to finally get to the space station. And funny enough, the friend told this guy in space that he and his friends at the table did not want to answer this phone, all because they thought it was something super sketchy, which the astronaut found to be very hilarious. As the conversation ended, the original poster realized that he forgot to tell this astronaut about how much this post that he put online has blown up and become very popular. So he says he's going to send him an email and kind of give him a heads up that, hey, our situation was really funny. I really think getting a phone call from somebody in space would be one of the coolest experiences on planet Earth. Talk about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that really only comes around once in a lifetime. So the next time you see a call coming from the US government, pick up the phone and answer it. You might just get to talk to an astronaut, or you messed up your taxes. One of those. Today I messed up by taking out a loan that I can't afford. I've never been good at money. I was never taught about money. Never seemed to really mind too much that I lived paycheck to paycheck because I always just kind of figured it out. But now that I'm older and trying to get my life together, I'm trying to figure it out much quicker. But my bad habits are already there and they are so hard to break. I recently went on a mini vacation with some friends who are decently well off. We went to a small town in the middle of nowhere. It didn't seem like I was spending a lot of money at the time. I told one of my close friends I needed to stick to a budget. Well, things quickly added up, especially when you're having fun and drinking and not sticking to your budget. My close friend was nice enough to front me money so I could enjoy myself and just have fun. But who likes the stress of owing a friend money? And who likes to feel like the poor loser of the group? So yesterday, after several drinks and a lot of stress about how I was going to pay my rent, my friend, and my upcoming bills, I thought it would be a good idea to take out a quick loan. In my head, I thought it was a good idea. I would pay all that I had coming up, then pay the loan back over the next couple of months. The website said I qualified for $1,500, but quote, responsible me said to myself, I don't need that much. How about just $900? I signed all of the online documents and clicked submit. I got an email saying I was approved and would receive my money within the next few hours. Once the money was in my bank account, I went online and paid my rent, paid half my car payment, paid my friend who fronted me the rest of the money for the trip, as well as June's credit card bill. I went to bed last night feeling so good and relieved. I actually felt like I got myself out of the mess I got myself into. Well, that quickly faded. I wake up this morning with a pounding headache, and I realized what I had done and how badly I had completely messed up. The loan payment schedule is $145 every 2 weeks from June until January. By the time I pay them back, I'll have paid over $2,000 due to the high interest rate. I can't afford this, and I have no idea how I will make this happen. So I woke up kicking myself and telling myself, how can I be so stupid over and over again? And when will I ever learn to grow up and stop making stupid financial decisions? Oh, and to top it all off, today is my birthday, and my friends are coming over to barbecue and to celebrate. And all I can think about is how I gave myself a $2,000 debt for my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Yeah, not your best decision to make when you're under the influence. Being in debt is scary, but I've learned the hard way that you shouldn't pay for credit card bills with other credit cards. So taking out a loan to pay for stuff only to realize that you've given yourself a bigger debt to deal with is definitely a lesson you'll learn once very quickly. I also kind of want to know where his friends were when this was happening. Like, why did nobody stop him, or was he just over by himself, completely wasted out of his mind, typing in all of his personal information? Definitely not the best decision to make when you're under the influence, but hopefully you're able to find a solution and probably get a second job just to pay this off real quick. My wife had an affair with her coworker, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I found out that my wife had an affair with her former supervisor, who they themselves is also married with kids. We've been married for 5 years, and we were high school sweethearts. We were each other's first relationship and first everything. When we were little kids, we were even neighbors. She has literally always been there. We both came from broken homes, but we always had each other, and we created something different than what we grew up seeing, or at least that's what I thought we did. Maybe I was just one big idiot the entire time. I still work remote while my wife has since gone back to being in person. There's not many women in her field, and she used to vent to me a lot that her job was more in line with a boys' club than anything else. Her supervisor at the time was apparently one of the good ones, and supposedly they looked out for my wife at work. Recently, my wife received a promotion, and I was so happy for her. She was now a supervisor herself. This gave some new responsibilities for her, such as having to take a few business trips during the year. Her first trip happened last week, Wednesday through Friday. Before she left, I told her that I would be rooting for her from home, and she told me that she'd be leaving her heart with me and to take care of it. That's something she always says to me whenever we have to be apart for whatever reason. On Monday, she came home from work early. I could immediately tell that something was wrong. She looked overwhelmed, and there was a red mark on her right cheek. My wife is pale and tends to bruise very easily. I asked her what happened, but she only asked me for a hug. She said that she just wanted to feel my embrace. I hugged her after a few moments, and she proceeded to say that there was an accident at work. She sat me down on the couch and made the confession that has destroyed me and completely uprooted my life. She spent some quality time, if you know what I mean, with her former supervisor on the team lead trip. I couldn't even process at first. It was like I was watching it happen to someone else, or like she was going to reveal it was just a cruel joke. I think I would have accepted the cruel joke over reality. I was quiet during her whole confession, not saying one word. I was just completely in shock. Cheating is a sensitive topic for me, as it is for a lot of people. My own family was wrecked by an affair my dad had. I'm the one who caught him cheating and told my mom. My dad and I's relationship is not good at all because he blames me for apparently ruining the family, and he has never forgiven me. My wife saw what cheating did to my family and knew how much it tore me apart. She has even seen me cry over this when we were teens, and she comforted me. And then she turns around and does this to me? To us? Apparently, the man's own wife found out and confronted her husband and my wife at work. It was a big scene with employees and customers all present and watching. The woman had called my wife trailer trash and slapped her. After the slap, other employees started interfering, and the woman was escorted out of the building. My wife then called her older sister. In her words, she said her sister scolded her and told her that she needed to tell me about the affair and that I needed to hear it from her. I still never said a word, and she asked me to please just say something. The only thing I could muster up to say in the moment was that I needed her to tell me what happened on the trip. She said on the second day of the trip, she went out for drinks with the other team leads and that the group stayed out late, and she felt like she needed to participate for a team bonding experience. Throughout the night, each team lead wandered off until it was only her and her former supervisor, and then they went back to his room to listen to music. He kept complimenting her and telling her how beautiful she was, and that if he were me, he wouldn't be able to keep his hands off of her. Eventually, he kissed her. My wife told me she doesn't know what came over her, and that she wasn't thinking clearly, but she let him keep kissing her, which then turned into a lot more stuff, if you know what I mean. At that point, I didn't want to know any more details because I couldn't take it, and so I got up off the couch, telling her to stop. She reached out to take my hand, but I moved away and told her not to touch me. She broke down crying and started profusely apologizing and begging for forgiveness. She started saying how it was the biggest mistake of her life, and she hates herself, and she wishes she could take it back. She kept repeating how much she loves me and only me, and that the drinks she had clouded her judgment. I told her she needed to leave. I said that she needed to call her sister to pick her up. She got up off the couch, crying even more, and tried to hug me, but I moved away. She begged me not to do this, saying all kinds of stuff like she will quit her job, give me full access to her phone, saying we'll do counseling. I couldn't keep it together. I told her if she wasn't going to leave the house, then I would. I didn't even stop to pack a bag or anything, but just went for the door. She grabbed my arm, I guess to try and stop me from leaving, and kept pleading for me to not do this, and saying after everything we've been through that this cannot be the way we end it. Despite everything, seeing her in that state and leaving her behind while she was crying still tore me apart because I love her. I love her more than I ever thought was possible to love someone else. But she broke me. She tossed our entire life and future away. I ended up going to my mom's house, and that's currently where I'm staying. I don't even know how I kept my senses during the drive, but when I arrived, I just cried. I don't think my mom has ever seen me cry as a teen or as an adult. The only person who's ever seen me cry is my wife. I did tell my mom what happened because I honestly didn't know how to keep it from her, with me showing up at her place in that way. She was brokenhearted over it. She and my wife always got along. My wife treated her like a daughter. That was their relationship. She didn't pass judgment, but said I could stay as long as I needed and tried to offer some words of comfort. Ever since I left, My wife has been blowing up my phone with calls and text messages, but I haven't answered or wrote her back. The text messages have basically just been begging me to come home and to talk with her, asking where I am and to please not give up on us. I just feel so broken. I thought I knew what this pain was like, but it's nothing compared to experiencing it for yourself. I never thought my wife would do something like this. I always had the belief that there was no coming back from cheating for me, that the relationship would be over, but now I keep thinking I should give our relationship just one more chance, go to counseling together, and try to salvage the relationship. I keep thinking back to all the history we have, how much I love her, how we always felt like matching puzzle pieces, and how when I thought I had no one, she was there. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to proceed, and honestly, I'm at a loss. This is a really tricky situation, and you have every right to be hurt by this. This is literally your high school sweetheart and someone you have spent your entire life with. It's so heartbreaking to hear that she went behind your back and betrayed your trust. I think your mind is in the right place where you want to try and salvage the relationship, and if you're both willing, give it a try. But I really would not let this go. This is a very big deal. Overall, I really wish you the best of luck, and hopefully this works out in some way that's good for both of you. My entitled father is upset with me because I won't buy him a house, and I don't know what to do about this. My dad trashed his credit when he was younger. On top of that, he had his first kid, which is me, when he was 18 years old, and after 5 years of being together, decided to leave after they had their fourth kid together. I'm not sure how long that time was, but because of this, he had to pay child support until we were put in foster care, and eventually he got custody of us. Well, he never ended up paying that child support, which further ruined his credit. It's been 20 years and he's not paid a dime. He obtained his money through illegal means, as well as my brother's SSI check. He also hasn't done a thing to even attempt to improve his credit. Well, because of this, he can't and he refuses to have anything in his name, expecting me and my siblings to do it for him. His business is in my brother's name after running it illegally for nearly 10 years. Now he wants to buy the house he lives in. It was supposed to be sold to him through land contract, but of course he made this deal by word versus actually obtaining a contract. The landlord, I guess, is trying to sell the house, and because my brother wasn't approved, he's depending on me to do it. I have the best credit and I make the most money on paper compared to my other siblings, but I refuse to do this. I'm happy to help point him in the right direction to approve his own credit and to do everything through the right channels, but I refuse to do this for him. I'd be buying him his first home before buying my own, and that just doesn't sit right with me. And now because of this, he's blowing up my phone, telling me how he raised me and how I owed him for that, telling me about all the sacrifices and the bad choices he had to make in order to raise us, and how I never helped him, and that apparently I'm just cold and heartless. It's like no matter how much I give, it never seems to be enough. The worst part is that he fails to realize that I could never depend on him for help if I truly needed it, and that is simply a shame. I feel really bad for the original poster in this situation because their dad is basically guilt-tripping them into buying them a house. But if I was in their shoes, there's no way I would buy this guy this house. He's already destroyed his credit. Who's to say that he wouldn't try and ruin yours as well? He clearly does not care about anyone but himself, just based on what we've been told in this story. Just because somebody raised you from a child to adulthood does not mean that you're obligated to them in any way, shape, or form. I think there would be an honest expectation that yes, you are going to love them and support them and care for them, but if this is how they're going to act and this is how they're going to treat you, then I personally wouldn't step up and buy them a house either, especially if you yourself don't have a house of your own. The only person that's responsible for this man having bad credit is him. He's the one that flushed that down the drain, not you. And there's no stopping him from basically doing that to your credit too. So yeah, I think you're doing it right in my opinion, and I wouldn't feel too bad, because chances are if it's not you that's going to help him out, he will just look for some other unfortunate soul and guilt trip them into buying him a house. So maybe thank your lucky stars that you're dodging a really sticky situation. My entitled neighbor thinks that they can just help themselves to my garden. Well, I should have known that no good deed goes unpunished. We have a small vegetable and herb garden in the corner of our yard. Two neighbors have the ability and my permission to reach over the fence and snip off any herbs that they need. We always grow much more than we can use. One neighbor has been doing it for years with no problems. He takes a spring or two a few times a week and always asks if he needs more than usual. He repays me in beautiful roses, but I would have no problem with not getting them in return. He is genuinely just very considerate. The other neighbor, on the other hand, has never cooked, so he never took any, but now he has a new girlfriend and she happened to introduce herself while I was planting my plants. So I offered her some once it has the chance to grow a little bit. That last part is important. So of course, 2 weeks after I planted, she snips off all but a few leaves of every herb 2 weeks after I planted them. I was livid. My boyfriend went over and explained that it was too soon, that the plants were tiny and that they were not ready. I sent him over because honestly, he is much nicer than I am. The neighbor apologized profusely and said the girlfriend wouldn't be going anywhere near the herbs until I specifically allow it. A week later, I catch her once again out there with a pair of scissors, but this time it's only been a week and there's nothing to take off this plant anymore. Apparently, she can't make meatballs without having parsley, and the grocery store, you know, the one within walking distance, is just too far to go to. One of my plants has 3 leaves on it. Seriously, only 3. The other neighbor doesn't dare take anything before mid-July, and he certainly would never touch anything before I did. We locked eyes and looked at each other for a few seconds until I just outright said, "Please, from here on out, get your herbs from the store." And I can't believe I managed to think of that. Usually I think of a great comeback 10 minutes after the fact. She turned bright red and went into the house. Hopefully this embarrassed her enough to stay away and get her own stuff from the store. I don't want to have problems with this neighbor. He's quiet and he's nice and he doesn't bother anyone. Tomorrow it will be a week since I caught her again, so we'll see what happens next. It honestly sounds like you need to set up a camera system of some kind. Maybe even hide it in some of the potted plants so that she won't notice it. If she's taking stuff off your garden before it's ready to be harvested, then she's basically wasting your plants and she's ruining your garden. Yeah, you embarrassed her, and obviously it sounds like that might be enough for her to not come back, but it would almost be better to have more video proof just in case she tries to do this when you're not at home or something like that. The other solution is to say, "Hey, let's move our garden. Put it on the other side of the fence, that way this lady can't get to it." It's an unfortunate thing, but if this continues going on, you might need to look at your options. My boyfriend, in a fit of rage, ripped up my passport while we were overseas on holiday, and now I can't get home. For context, I've been with my boyfriend for 5 years. A while back, we decided to go on holiday to Spain for a week. We've been in Spain for about 3 days now, and so far it's been alright. Normally my boyfriend is really sweet, but he can get angry when things don't go his way. Tonight, we decided to go out for dinner. We both have a key to our room, but I lost mine somehow when we went out. It is a key card. However, just for context, we could still just get into our room, and I can get a replacement tomorrow morning if need be. But my boyfriend freaked out and thought that any person could just get into our room or our flat while we were staying there, whether we locked the door or not. I was crying and didn't understand why he was being like this. He got incredibly angry and started throwing things around the room, and that's when he found my passport. When he found it, he started to rip the pages out of it. He said that if I can't be responsible for other belongings, then I don't deserve my own. He then said that he doesn't want to come home with me, and he went out. I don't understand why he's being like this. How can I apologize to him and show him I'm responsible? I love him so much and he's a sweet guy. Also, how can I get home safely? I'm in another country. What do I do? That is literally my worst nightmare. Losing your passport abroad is a terrifying idea. And the fact that this guy intentionally started ripping up your passport is really scary. This guy is not a good boyfriend. You absolutely first and foremost need to get away from him. Go down to the front desk and explain, "Hey, I'm in an abusive relationship and this guy is freaked out and I gotta get away from him." They might be able to get you a different room so that you don't have to stay there. So yeah, pack your things and get away from that. That guy is unhinged and definitely not worth the time. And you also need to call the American embassy like right now. They can probably get you some kind of paperwork to prove that, hey, you are a United States citizen, and then provide you some kind of temporary paperwork so that you can at least get home. That is so scary when you're traveling abroad, because if you don't have that passport, you literally can't do anything. You will be stuck in Spain. And I think it's safe to assume, just like anybody who's just a tourist, that you probably don't know the local language. Overall, this is a really scary situation to be in, and I genuinely hope you get things worked out and you're able to go home. My entitled dad faked being sick so he wouldn't have to go to my final drama camp. This happened a couple of years ago. Me and my friends, who I'll call Amy and Leo, that's not their real names, were attending a finale summer camp together. I was 16 at the time. I was going into my junior year of high school and they were graduating. The camp we were going to was being held by a large college, and this college had held these types of summer camps for high schoolers as well as graduates throughout the years. So this would be the last camp that Amy and Leo would go to before they went off to college. The last 2 previous years, we had all gone to the art camp. We were going to join the writing camp since we all love to write stories and wanted to get better, but they ran out of places, so instead we joined the drama class. We were going for a week, and at the end of that week, there was a grand finale, and this grand finale had a fantastic showcase night. The camp of roughly 46 or so was divided into 4 groups, and each group had about 4 different shows in them that they would each perform. They were all snippets of different popular books, shows, movies, you name it. I was in the finale show, The Wizard of Oz. I was playing the Scarecrow, who is pretty important for the story. I was supposed to be right in front of the entire auditorium, and I would make the audience laugh with some of the jokes I had in the script. My mom had promised me that she would be there, and so all that week, I was practicing my lines, getting better at my act, and was even able to memorize my friends' lines because of how often we were all helping one another with them. Well, showcase night came around. There was a TV in our backstage room that showed all the parents in the auditorium. I could see all of my friends' parents, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't see my parents. When it was finally time for the finale show, me and my group went out, and it was amazing. It was our best performance we had ever done, and I got the audience to laugh quite a bit with my jokes and acting. When we were all done, we all lined up side by side and gave our bows. And finally, the lights came on, and just like I thought, my parents hadn't come. When it finally hit me, I almost cried on stage. Leo's mom came up and apologized, saying my dad was sick and that my mom had to stay to take care of him. When we got to our dorms where me and my friends stayed at, my mom messaged Amy, saying she was very sorry and that she wished that she could have made it. I started crying and sobbing to the point where one of the camp leaders came in to check on me. The next day, Leo's mom met my mom halfway at their meetup spots, and my mom explained it all. She and my sister were getting ready to go to the show when all of a sudden my dad started acting sick. He said his stomach hurt and that he was running a fever, which of course he wasn't. And when my mom tried to leave, he whined and complained, saying he wanted her to stay. She told him off, saying that she wanted to go to my show, but he kept it up until she finally had enough and didn't go to the show. When it was around time for the showcase to start, he miraculously got better and looked at my mom and told her that he wanted to go look at truck parts in the next state over because of course he did. My mom was pissed, but she ended up taking him and kept telling him off about how childish he was, but he just brushed it all off. My sister even verified all this information, and this made me even more upset at my dad. When we got home, he didn't even ask about how camp was or how the show went. Not even an apology for not showing up. I finally left my house about 3 months ago and I moved in with my boyfriend, and I have gone no contact with my dad. My mom says that he's been upset about this, but I don't care. He dug his own grave and he's going to have to stay there. This is a really terrible thing to do to your kid. I can understand that you don't want to go to some silly recital or some kind of showcase that your kid's a part of. He probably, obviously, would rather go look at truck parts than go to this drama camp. I get it. But sometimes you gotta suck it up and show support for your kids. The way this dad is acting and the way he went about doing this is somehow worse, in my opinion, than if he just straight up lied and said he has some kind of excuse as to why he can't go. Like if he said, oh, I've got a work engagement, and then just went across state borders to go look at truck parts, then maybe he could have gotten away with it. But the fact that he lied about being sick and then got better, obviously, just to go do that, and then with the expectation that his wife is gonna be there for him and then go with him, is just flat out disgusting. That is really toxic behavior. I feel really bad for this original poster because I'm sure this was such a special night for them, especially because they're sending their two best friends off who are graduating and going to college. They will not be with them for this next summer camp. It's truly sad overall, and I kind of don't blame them for going no contact with their dad. It sounds like this is kind of a perpetual thing that he's done a lot, so it kind of makes sense in the context of the story why they just suddenly said, okay, I'm done. But hopefully things work out and time will eventually heal this wound, and that maybe in the future they can go back and try and talk to each other once again. Although in my opinion, that's probably not going to happen for a very long time. My stepsister is upset that I won't share my inheritance with her. My stepsister joined our family when she was 12 and I was 14. My grandparents and I were always close, since my father would take me over there to their place every week. Soon my sister began to spend weekends with them. Unfortunately, my grandmother passed away soon after. My grandfather also recently passed away. My grandmother was especially fond of me. In her will, she gave me a lot of handwritten letters about the times she took care of me and every small detail about me. Both of them had also willed their house to me. This was because when I was young, I'd always pester them asking for a big house like theirs. It really brought tears to my eyes because of the sentimental value behind it. They also gave me a good chunk of cash in a trust, which I would be able to access next year. My stepsister, on the other hand, didn't get anything. She was quite disappointed because she thought she had a good relationship with my grandfather. This didn't really surprise me though. While he treated her kindly, it was pretty clear he only did so because he had to. She's now asking me for some of the inheritance money because she feels the money could help her out. I'm not so sure if I should help her because it wasn't gifted to her. She wants to buy a house now, and she's quite upset, and I honestly don't know what to do about it. I feel so bad for this step-sibling in this situation because the grandparents basically said, hey, we don't like you that much. And they didn't leave her anything, which just sucks. So I can understand where this stepsister is coming from, where they're like, hey, I want some of the money. So you could honestly play this one of two ways. You could either give her some money to try and satisfy some jealous need she has, to try and help herself out and to get some semblance of an inheritance, or you can say, sorry, this is what grandma and grandpa left me, I'm not giving you any. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you for going either option. It really is unfortunate that the will did not include your stepsister, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And that's totally not your fault, and it's completely out of your hands. That's honestly on the grandparents for not leaving their stepdaughter something. I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why they decided, hey, we're not leaving you anything, but honestly, it is what it is. All you could do is be sorry that she didn't get any and then move forward with your life. This very well could be your chance to have a financially secure future. You literally have a home and you have a big chunk of change. And I don't think there's any real reason to give that up to your stepsister just because they're jealous. It really does suck for them. Like, honestly, don't get me wrong, and I do feel bad about their situation, but there's honestly nothing you can really do about it. So honestly, the choice is yours. And I think depending on the nuanced details of your specific situation that maybe you didn't listen to the story, I think either option could be really good for you. Today, I messed up by coming out of the closet, literally. For some background, I'm gay. And I was very nervous to come out to my mom and my sister. While they are not my biological family, I chose them after they took me in as a teenager. They became my family about a year ago when I was 17. And in my previous life, I still had some odd behavior because of my past. One of those quirky behaviors that I had was that I liked to stay in closets, under the bed, or any other small hiding places. When I was stressed, worried about what family would think or do, or wanted to eat food while stressing out, I would go hide. Naturally, worrying about being accepted is stressful, especially because I was worried about where I was going to go if I wasn't accepted here. What if they sent me away because of this? Anyway, the day I decided to tell them came around, and I pretty much hid in my favorite spot, a large closet, all evening while I figured out what to do. The closet itself was pretty big, and it was basically a tiny room. It had a light, some cushions, and a bookshelf in it with my clothes. At this point, my sister basically found me hiding in the closet, and she tried to start encouraging me, saying that, hey, it's okay to come out. My mom gets home eventually, and she hears that I'm refusing to come out of the closet, and tries talking to me through the door. I eventually managed to say that I have something to tell them. My mom tells me, okay, but can you come out of the closet? I respond and say, I can't. I'm worried people will hate me. I like girls. At this point, I just hear near hysterical laughter on the other side of the door, like so hard you cry. In between laughing fits, the mom tells me she's sorry for laughing, but this is super ironic. She says, you're in 2 closets right now. I finally realize she's picking up what I put down, and I see the funny side of all of this too. I ask if she's mad. She says absolutely not, and that everything was going to be okay. And that was such a relief to hear. That is a really adorable story, and your chosen family sounds absolutely amazing and hysterical. I also find the double meaning of this situation to be really funny. It's such a hard thing for people to come out and express who they really are, especially when it comes to subject matter like this. The original poster comes from a really messed up background, and with their new chosen family, it just sounds like they were really stressed out that they would somehow reject her. But thankfully, they embraced her, and they had a good laugh about it too. And that, in my opinion, is such a beautiful thing to see, because you would want your family to be there for you through thick and thin. And it sounds like this person's new family definitely fits the bill. Today I messed up by consuming an energy drink. I like energy drinks and I'm no stranger to them. My caffeine addiction began in high school with Mountain Dew, the gateway drink to the caffeine world. I would do all sorts of things to heighten the taste and the feel that I would get from drinking these drinks, like adding sugar to the mix just so I could feel more energized. I've added sugar to Jolt Cola, and I've mixed instant coffee with caffeinated water. I'm not proud of these moments, but I have done it, and this will be important later for the story. Since then, I've cut my habits to 1 energy drink in the morning with the occasional soda in the evening, but my caffeine tolerance is still considerable. I may finish the second half of my energy drink after a good nap, to give you an idea. This morning started out like any other, with a new drink from some brand I'd never heard of and a protein cookie. Both came from a monthly subscription box I enjoy for 0 sugar energy drinks. The cookie was not good, but the energy drink was tasty. Within 30 to 60 minutes of finishing, I felt nauseous. I thought maybe the cookie just wasn't sitting well. meal. I wrote it off and had plain white rice with plenty of water for lunch. It only got worse. I started trembling and broke out in a cold sweat. I tried to dry my hands, but I just kept sweating. It was disgusting. I sat at the computer for hours, flapping my hands every 5 minutes like a pathetic, flightless dinosaur bird with tiny wings, trying to dry my hands off. Maybe I was getting sick. The trembling was severe and the nausea was so bad that I had nothing but water for several hours. I endured over 8 hours of queasy trembling, sweating, and flapping before a tiny thought started tickling the distant reaches of my brain. Didn't I try a new drink today? I looked at the can and Googled it. Redline Cognitive Candy is stronger than the original Redline and Redline Extreme. Sure, but they all say that. It's just marketing fluff. I try different brands all the time and drink a can a day, so there's no way, right? I kept reading. Redline energy drinks are currently the second most potent energy drinks available to consumers in the United States. So it's less potent by volume than 5-Hour Energy, but there's more of it in a can, so it ends up being stronger overall. Even better, the protein cookie I had alongside it was so dry that I basically slammed the entire thing in 20 minutes. It wasn't on a completely empty stomach, but that tiny protein cookie was a white picket fence versus the Redline Tsunami. But that's old news. At this point, the restraints are locked in, and I'm on this ride until it ends. I look it up, and apparently there's a class action lawsuit filed over Redline Energy Drink, and according to the Redline Energy Drink lawsuit, persons who have consumed the product have reported a range of adverse effects, including but not limited to chills, excessive sweating, vomiting, convulsions, chest pains, and rapid heartbeats. And this lawsuit was back in 2012. Didn't I just read that this new one is stronger than even the extreme version? Side effects of caffeine overdose are trembling, anxiety, rapid heartbeat. Well, for me, this is a first. The effects began to lessen very, very gradually. By the time I felt capable of eating, I was ravenous. It seemed only appropriate to have Taco Bell like a good little junkie. It was a bright spot in a sea of misery. I was trembling and sweating and nauseous and felt anxious for hours, if not the entire day. So I had to get something to eat. I went to bed at around 3 o'clock in the morning. In the end, it took over 24 hours to come down from this unassuming little can of energy. I'm both terrified and impressed. I'm still convinced that they probably put something illegal in this drink that somehow slipped past any kind of regulation, because this energy drink was unbelievably intense. And to be honest, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to order more. If I were you, I would never order any more of that drink ever again. It clearly had horrible side effects. I've never been a big fan of energy drinks, and this is just another reason why. Those things are great if you're trying to make like a long drive and you need a lot of energy to get things going, but in my opinion, that's about it. I would never personally try and drink those casually or for every meal or anything like that. Maybe once in a blue moon. The original poster here has clearly got some kind of addiction with caffeine, and it seems like they met their match with this energy drink they're describing. That sounds like a really intense experience that I personally would never want to go through. Sweating, nervousness, anxiousness, nausea. This does not sound like a fun time. But overall, next time, just be careful and make sure you know what you're getting into before you drink a new energy drink. My entitled aunt tried to announce her daughter's pregnancy at my baby shower, and I couldn't be more upset. My husband and I are finally expecting our rainbow baby after years of infertility and multiple miscarriages. It's safe to say we and our family are very freaking excited. My mother is probably the most excited. She's been planning our baby shower and making decorations for months. She's been the biggest help during this exciting yet scary pregnancy. A few weeks ago, my aunt told my mother and I that my cousin is pregnant, and we are honestly very happy for her. However, my aunt said their plan is to announce her pregnancy at my baby shower, apparently because we're going to be having a big party anyway, so it just makes sense. She said it's not a big deal and that we can both just share the day. I said absolutely not, because we've been waiting for this day forever, and it should be all about me and my rainbow baby. My mother's on my side and told my aunt that they better not announce anything at the party, so my aunt dropped it and nothing else ever was really said. Last Saturday was my baby shower. It was everything I've waited for. Everything is going good. No one has announced my cousin's pregnancy. When it was time for us to eat my cake, my aunt said, hold on, everyone," and she went outside to her car to go grab something. That was the moment I knew something was up. My mother and I follow her outside, and my aunt decided to bring a cake announcing my cousin's pregnancy and some presents for my cousin. My mother immediately told my aunt that she will not be bringing those back into the party and that they will not be ruining my day. My aunt started throwing a fit. She started screaming, "This is a baby shower. It's for babies. And your cousin is having a baby too. So this day is about her too." My My cousin now joins in and starts screaming at us, saying how pissed off she is, that everything is always about me, asking why we always have to just be happy for me. They were so mad they would not stop screaming. Eventually, the place that we rented for this party had to call security and had my aunt and my cousin kicked out of their facility. Because of this, half of our family was really upset with us that we wouldn't allow my cousin to have a moment at my shower too. So because of that, they left as well. Now apparently everybody is bashing my mother, myself, and my rainbow baby online. It's honestly a mess, but I'm glad that I didn't let them steal my spotlight. For those who don't know what a rainbow baby is a baby that's born after a miscarriage, and it's a term used to describe the joy and hope after the storm of losing a baby. So obviously, this is not your ordinary baby shower. Like, how dare this aunt and cousin try and strong arm their way into this baby shower? This is not like any normal baby shower. This is a very specific and special occasion. The original poster literally lost their previous child, and they were so happy to finally have another baby on the way after years of trying. Those two people should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. And good for the mom and the daughter for deciding to stand up and say, no, absolutely not. Like, they even told him ahead of time that you cannot do this at my party. Like, wouldn't it be more appropriate to have your own party and get together? That way you can have your own spotlight and it really can be all about you. But no, they decide to literally bring their own cake and their own gifts just to try and make it all about them suddenly. Like, that's not okay. And as for the rest of the family being upset about this, fine, be upset. If they can't see that this is a special day of some kind, then they are the ones with the problem, not you. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for wanting to cut my father out of my life? To start things out, I'm going to admit that I am very young. I'm a 15-year-old female, and I might be overreacting about this, but I still want to get some perspective. When my mom found out she was pregnant, she obviously told my father. Instead of my father being happy, he denied it was his and accused my mom of cheating. Fast forward, and I'm born. My great-grandma was there, my grandma and grandpa on my mom's side were there, even my grandparents on my father's side was there, but not my father. We got a DNA test to prove that I was his child, and my grandparents were ecstatic to actually be grandparents, but not my father. I would like to mention that my mother got married only once, and that was last year with a guy that she dated for 10 years. So when they split again, my father was not required to be present in my life. Fast forward to the point in my life where I finally started remembering things. My mom had gotten pregnant with a man that didn't throw her out. I am sure that this guy is actually my dad, but every time I called him that, he said no. My sibling is born and I am happy. However, things take a turn. My mom started noticing that I acted different from other kids, and my mom took me to a doctor. I was diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, and autistic tendencies, which is like autism but not completely. I still have problems with sarcasm and emotions to this day. This was a deal breaker for my sibling's father, and he kicked us out saying he would visit my sister, which only happened once, as he now lives in Florida. We ended up homeless, and my father still did the minimum. And no, he didn't take us in. He just paid $50 extra for the child support. We ended up with my great-grandma, where she slept on a recliner, my mom and sister slept on the bed, and I slept on the couch. The place we were staying at was only a one-bedroom apartment. We moved out and into a house thanks to my amazing mother. She met a man who has done more for me than my father ever has. At this point, I think my father is no longer alive. I thought this honestly for 2 years. I'm with my grandparents on his side, whom I see almost every week. They tell me that he's not passed away, and they let me call him. This was in the 3rd grade. I talk to him more often, but I recently came to realize that all my problems were his fault. He doesn't pay enough child support to actually support me, which was proven when I had to go a week only eating school food and leftovers from my neighbors. He stopped calling me again, and I'm considering just cutting him off. He didn't send money when I told him about my food problems at home. He showed little to no sympathy for me when I attempted ending it, and he puts little to no effort in our relationship. I want to cut him off, but I still want the relationship with my grandparents. They mean the world to me, and I love my mom and stepdad. I fear ending relationships with my father will sever my family's relationship with them too, not just mine. Am I overreacting in this situation? What should I do? This is a really tricky situation because it sounds like this is something that runs a lot deeper than just your own experience. It sounds like when it was time for your dad to actually be your dad, he did not step up to the plate and instead ran away. And I think, in my opinion, that's all I would ever need to know in order for me to understand who my dad really was. And it sounds like, from my perspective of just what we've heard, he's not a very good person. So no, no, I don't think you're the jerk for deciding to cut him off. If I was in your shoes, I probably would have done the same thing. But I completely understand your other perspective too. You don't want to ruin the relationships you have with your grandparents. So whatever you decide to do, I hope it all works out for you, because this is a really tricky situation no matter how you look at it. An entitled woman intentionally puts her own hair in her food, all so she wouldn't have to pay her bill of $130. Last night was my last training night as a server with my restaurant, which basically meant I did everything that night with my trainer following me around and making sure I didn't mess up. So I go up to this table, introducing myself and my trainer, and we start walking this woman with her 3 kids through the menu. She says that it's her first time here repeatedly, and she apparently lost her reading glasses, so we have to coach her through everything. So my trainer and I tag team the situation. My trainer takes the lady who can't really read without her glasses, and I take the 3 teenagers to get their orders. Eventually, everybody at the table settles on some food and we get some orders. Someone else ends up bringing the food out, and the person who's bringing the food out is bald. We checked on her table afterwards and she said everything tastes great. As I'm checking on another table later, I see her waving me over, asking me to come over to her table. It's at that moment she shows me these 3 black long strands of hair, all of which that's in her food. I apologize and run the plate to my manager and let him know the situation. My trainer and I start talking, and we both have light hair, and my trainer's hair is in a tight military bun. So then we try to find out who ran the food out, and that's when we confirm that the person who did it is bald. So at that point, we start going down the line of just about everybody in the restaurant who could have possibly touched her food. And one by one, we confirmed that none of the people on our line or in our staff had hair that matched the description. And that's when our suspicions raised that this woman actually just put her own hair in the food so that she could get her money back. And that's exactly what happens. This woman gets her entire check comped and then goes through the effort to get our attention as she leaves and gives us each $1 on what would have been a $130 bill. She then tries to tell us how we were great with our service and all this other stuff. But at this point, all of the staff know that it's her own hair that she put in the food and that she honestly just didn't want to pay for it. They walked away getting a free meal, and I wish I could have been able to call them out on it. I wish you could have called them out on it too, because that's just such a ridiculous situation. This lady ripped her own hair out of her head just so she could get a free meal. No one else on staff fit the description of having that type of hair except for the lady sitting in front of the plate. And while they couldn't obviously confirm that, hey, you put your own hair in this food, just by the process of elimination, they could pretty much confirm that, hey, it has to be your own hair, which is honestly just a terrible situation to be in regardless. Because how can you prove otherwise? This lady could probably freak out and start losing her mind in this restaurant if you didn't comp the meal. So it truly was a situation where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. That restaurant should honestly think about getting some cameras to try and prove if this actually happened in the future. That way they can probably save more money and they won't lose $130 for a meal, all because some lady lied and stuffed her own hair in the food. I have been betrayed by my daughter, my partner, as well as my housemate, and I don't know what to do about it. So I live with my partner, my daughter, and my partner's best mate. We have been together for a year and a half, and things have always been pretty good. His mate and I don't see eye to eye. In fact, he has never liked me since he moved in. He is very lazy, is leeching off my partner, and taking advantage of him. I have spoken to my partner plenty of times about this, but he says it's his mate and he needs to help him. My partner and I both work full-time jobs, and neither of the other two work. I do all the cooking, cleaning, laundry, everything for all 4 of us. I will cook a massive roast dinner, and they will all sit and eat it, but I'm left with all the dishes and the cleaning up. I have tried leaving it, but after 2 days, my OCD kicks in and I have to clean it. I'm just so exhausted. Countless times I've asked for help, but I've gotten none. My partner doesn't like confrontation, so he just makes a joke about it and then nothing else. The last 6 months, it's gotten worse, and I feel very unsupported by my partner, and even to the point where he will side with them. My daughter is very clingy and has anxiety. I have to beg for time for my partner and I to have alone because my daughter is always with us. If we go out for dinner, she is there. What I have found recently though is that the 2 of them have been going out without me and just going and doing stuff for hours. For instance, I will ask her to go to the shop or get something and he will offer to drive her or to go with her, and they will just get whatever, go visit friends, go for a drive, stop at the pub for a drink, and then come home 2 hours later. All the while I've been at home cooking and cleaning or just sitting around. I have asked time and time again that it stops, but they just say they never plan to and that it all just kind of happens out of nowhere. My daughter and I were close and have been through a lot together. She knows how much this hurts me, and yet she continues to do it. So last night they were out out, and 3 hours later, they come home with his mate. When I said that I didn't realize that my partner's mate had been out, they said that they passed him a few blocks away walking, and honestly, this is kind of normal. Well, I come to find out that they left an hour later, and he snuck out, and they picked him up around the corner, and they all went out to the local club for a few drinks. I read the messages between the mate and my daughter. She is going on about sneaking out to come hang out with them, that I've been such a terrible person, and that they should just forget about me, that apparently I'm boring, and that all I care about is that the house is clean. He responded with a, yeah, I agree, and that we didn't like each other anyway, stuff like that. My partner was even in on this. He was there and then lied to me about what happened when they got home. I feel so betrayed and like I'm the laughingstock of this group. I found out also that this is not the first time that this has happened. Do I leave? Do I pull my partner aside and give them an ultimatum? What should I do? This is a super toxic situation. To have not only your daughter, but other people in the house that you're living with, not only completely ignore the needs of the house, but then ignore the fact that you are basically the only reason that this house is even presentable is really not okay. And the fact that your partner is in on this and lied to you about all this stuff is also a super big red flag. The original poster went on to say that they woke their partner up to talk to them about all that was going on. They asked them, do you love me? And do you want a future with me? In which the partner responded, yes. The original poster goes on to say that they know about all the things that happened last night and that they blatantly do not want their mate staying with them any longer. And this partner told them to just stop it, rolled over, and went back to sleep. And as of their last update, they're packing their car and they're currently planning on leaving. Honestly, good for them. It's clear that the partner is not taking this seriously. They can say that they love them, but they're clearly not showing it. So I think this is a fantastic move in the right direction. Hopefully everything works out, and hopefully the relationship with your daughter can somehow be mended and fixed in some way that's good for everybody involved. But what would you do? Leave a comment down below. If you were in this situation, how would you handle it? Let us know. Today I messed up by cutting my own bangs, and now my hair looks terrible. A couple of years ago, I decided I want bangs, mostly because I kept thinking about this certain hairstyle that I saw. So I cut it myself to a length that would look cute untucked, but still be tuckable in case it turns ugly. It's basically curtain bangs, but less noticeable and requires less maintenance. It's not the best when it comes to looks, but it's still okay. It does the job of bringing more flair to my round face. Eventually, they grow past my shoulders, so it was time to cut it again. The first time, it turned out okay. It came out better than the first attempt. Then today, I realized that I would be around some more people. While I don't usually like the spotlight, I didn't want to fall in the background. So that's when I made the decision that today was going to be the day that I trim my hair. Previously, I finally gained the courage to offhandedly remark that I was interested in bangs to my mother, and when we went to cut our hair, she asked the hairstylist to give me side bangs. It wasn't noticeable. In fact, it kind of looked like my actual bangs that I did myself, but it was on the wrong part, so one bang was longer than the other, if that makes sense. Fast forward to today, and the one thing I needed to do while cutting my hair was even it out. The scissors I was going to use was outside, so I went to get it. I was impatient and I cut my hair without a mirror, and this proved to be a fatal wrong move. Just by seeing the pieces of the hair that I cut, I already knew that it was uneven. It's hard to explain. I went to my room that has a mirror and tried doing the other bang. It turned out better than the other one, but if you looked at both of them, you could tell that they were not straight. I didn't know what to do, so I put the scissors back and I tried to see what I could do to salvage my hair. With my hair down, you can tuck my bangs behind my ears and nothing looks super strange. But if you put it up in like a ponytail, only one can be tucked in. It's just a small thing, but oh my god, it annoys me. Thankfully, it'll be fine by the time school starts. And in the meantime, I think I'll look better with my hair down anyways. So the moral of the story, next time you want to cut your hair yourself, don't do it. I hate to be that guy, but I mean, did you expect anything less? You literally cut your own bangs without a mirror. What did you expect was gonna happen? Sometimes you can get lucky and try and figure it out just by looking up, I guess, but you should have used a mirror. You clearly got it right last time. Why would you risk it just because you're being impatient? Especially with something like hair. Overall though, I've been in this situation and it's a terrifying feeling. Having your hair look weird or kind of off, especially when you're in school, is just not a good feeling because you know somebody might say something. And that alone is more than enough to freak anybody out. So yeah, next time you want to cut your hair, maybe think about what you're doing, or at the bare minimum, make sure you have a mirror. Today I messed up by telling my boss's husband about her affair. I've been working at my job for almost 3 years now. It's a very small business and all of us are super close. Once a year, we all get together for our annual Christmas party. And when the drinks start going, everyone starts to spill the tea. It was my first this year working there, and after many drinks at this Christmas party, I found out through my boss that she's having an affair and wasn't hiding it in any way, shape, or form. Even though I think cheating is awful, it was not my place nor any of my business to say anything, so I kept that information to myself. However, over the course of the next 2 years, she would bring this guy to work, come in on days where we were closed to have, quote, alone time with him, and generally just leaving things in disarray before people can get into the office. It was getting worse and worse, and every time I saw her husband, I felt sick to my stomach, knowing what I know. Fast forward to yesterday, one of our coworkers was getting married, and I was sat at the same table as my boss and her husband, along with my other coworkers. When her husband left to get a drink, she started to tell me about her crazy night with the other man, and I couldn't hold my feelings in anymore. I politely asked her if we would change the subject because I didn't feel comfortable talking about her affair while her husband was 10 feet away from us. She got visibly upset and ran off, and when her husband got back to the table, he asked why she was so upset. I lied and said maybe she just had one too many to drink, because again, it wasn't my place to say anything. I went to go to my boss, and when he left, I asked my coworkers at the table if I was wrong for what I said. They said no, but to maybe just let her rant next time and keep my opinions to myself to avoid any drama. My response was, I'm sorry, but it just feels wrong pretending I'm okay with cheating, especially when everyone at work knows about him. Everyone's jaw dropped, and I heard a voice from behind me saying, she's still seeing him? The voice behind me was her husband, and I didn't even see or hear him coming back to the table. Turns out that she has been seeing this guy for close to 10 years, and at one point her husband caught them and told her that if she ever talked to him again, they were over. I was mortified and just kept stammering because how do I answer that? He quickly got his things and left. Some of my coworkers are calling me a jerk, and to be honest, I definitely feel like one. I just potentially ended their marriage. I don't know how I even mend this situation, let alone if I still have a job after this. What do I do? You need to first take a deep breath and realize that this is not your fault. Any coworker who's saying that you're a jerk is a terrible person. I mean, honestly, let's actually look at this for a second and think about what actually just happened. This lady was publicly parading around the office, bragging about how she's basically cheating on her husband. Like if it wasn't you that was going to spill the beans, it was eventually going to be somebody else. This is a classic situation of you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. And in this case, she won a very stupid prize. And you didn't do this. She did this to herself. She sunk her own marriage by deciding to go behind her husband's back. And that is not your fault. So I wouldn't feel bad about this in the slightest. And I don't think it's right for you to have to keep someone else's secret that is so damaging and detrimental. Like you have no obligation to these people in any way, shape, or form. At the end of the day, they are just coworkers. Like I'm pretty sure your job description did not include keep your boss's secret affairs. If they want to try and fire you, they better have a good reason. Otherwise, I smell a lawsuit personally. But all in all, I'm really sorry this situation happened. And if anything, I would probably look for a better job because your coworkers as well as your boss don't sound like the best people. And I think you would probably be a lot happier in a different situation. An insane Karen demands that I sell my PC at a garage sale and gets upset when I tell them no. I live in a small neighborhood where everyone knows each other and people do frequent yard sales. About 3 months ago, we had a man by the name of Bob move into the neighborhood with his wife and his son. They were very nice and we welcomed them into the neighborhood and even invited them over one night to have dinner. Now, the mom is what you would call a Karen, and you'll find out why a little bit later. I show the Karen's son my PC and he thought it was so cool. He also asked me if I had any games on it. I told him that I did not, as I used it for school projects or just to watch YouTube on it. The kid then asked me why I didn't have any games on my PC, so I explained to him that I have a gaming console that allows me to play all the games that I'm interested in. After dinner and before the family left, my mother told them about all the yard sales that this neighborhood likes to do, and she also told them about the yard sale that was coming up next week. As they were leaving, the Karen said that they would stop by and check things out. Fast forward to 1 week from now, and we're at our yard sale, and here comes the Karen and her son. Once they are near all the merchandise we are selling, she looked a little disappointed at the choices that we had. At first, I assumed it was because we had all kinds of toys and other things that little kids would be interested in. So my mom asked her, "You seem a bit disappointed." And that's when the Karen said, "Well, yeah, I was expecting your son to be selling his PC since he doesn't use it that often." My mom chimed in and said, excuse me? And this is where things kind of got heated. The Karen replied, "Yeah, my son told me about how you only use it for school and to watch YouTube on
want it, and in my opinion, that isn't a good use for it.
My mom snapped back at her and said, sorry, but his PC is not for sale. And it was at this point that the Karen basically demanded that we give her my PC. She said,
well, at this point, the way your son uses it, I think you should just give it to my son instead.
At this point, I popped in and told the Karen to leave us alone if she was just gonna demand things from us. She says,
how dare you talk to me like that?
My mother then told the Karen that I was right and that they needed to leave. So they left and we decided to call off the yard sale and to just do it sometime in the future. As we were bringing everything inside, we left the door open so we could both carry things in and out of the house. Finally, we got it done, and as we were both going inside the house, the Karen comes full sprint running at the door to try and get in our house. Thankfully, my mom was there and shut the door just in time. As the Karen was leaving our garage, my mom yelled back asking if this lady was crazy, demanding to know why she was trying to get into our house. The Karen then demanded that we give her son the PC or she would call the police on us and get us arrested for assault, because apparently we shut the door on her head somehow and she got hit, which is just not what happened. My mom called her bluff and told her to do it, and that when the cops show up, she can tell them exactly what actually happened. When my mom said this, the Karen backpedaled and got out of there fast. And after all was said and done, she never did call the cops. What an absolute psychopath. What kind of person would try to break into another person's home just to try and get somebody else's property? This lady has serious issues. And worst of all, this lady lives in your neighborhood. This original poster goes on to say that this Karen is a pain in the neck in the neighborhood. And I can understand why. This neighborhood is notorious for doing yard sales. Now you gotta worry about this lady trying to break and enter just to get that stupid PC. My suggestion is getting a security camera. I think a good option would be one of those cameras that also doubles as a doorbell. That way you can know exactly who's coming in and out and what they say when they're at your front door. But overall, just stay on your guard and make sure that that Karen doesn't climb through your window. Otherwise, you can kiss your PC goodbye. My girlfriend slapped me twice last night, so I've moved out all of my stuff, but now I miss her. What do I do? So for a bit of context, my girlfriend and I have been dating for 3 years, and since COVID happened, we've lived together at her dad's place. He's moved out with his girlfriend, so it's basically our place now. We've done it all up, made it look really nice, we got 2 cats together, and overall, we're pretty happy. There are a few glaring issues, however. She is a massive stoner, whereas I am not. She also has some mental health issues that she needs to see a therapist for. She can be quite snappy and rude, but I still love her and the life we have together. I can't really explain it, and although we argue and she doesn't always treat me right, I still enjoy our life together. So whenever we go out drinking, she always kicks off and makes a scene. It drives me nuts when I just want to have some fun with my friends. Last night she stormed off because she felt like everyone was ignoring her, and I went after her to try and talk to her and calm her down, and she ended up storming off and calling me some terrible names. And in all honesty, I nearly ended things right then and there, but I stuck it out because I love her. Last night we were out drinking again, and she did some seriously illegal substances for the first time ever, and things were not going well. However, she has work tomorrow morning and wanted everyone to come back to our place so she can hang out but also go to bed when she wants. But everybody else just wanted to stay out and go dancing instead. This is when she started kicking off at me, and again, I was trying to get her to calm down and talk her through this. She said that she has work tomorrow and this always happens. And at this point, I just simply couldn't be bothered anymore, and I said, then just get another job. And that's when I received my first slap out of nowhere, and she stormed off. I walked back and told my friend what happened. Obviously, they were outraged. We shortly left afterwards, and we saw my girlfriend down the road. She came up to me and asked for my key to the house and said I wasn't welcome back. Her friends were there, my friends were there, everyone was asking why she slapped me as I was taking the key off my keychain. I told her, hey, you're making a big mistake. And that's when I received my second slap, and she stormed off again. Everyone was outraged and freaked out, even her own friends. After that, I didn't see her for the rest of the night. I've got a zero tolerance policy when it comes to either partner hitting each other. So I went to the house this morning to get all my stuff and tell her it's over. She apologized profusely, saying that she will never do it again, and that it was the biggest regret of her life, and that she will do anything to make it up. She said that she'll clean up her act, she'll stop doing the illegal substances, and she will stop treating me like garbage. All the while, I was moving my stuff out and it was honestly pretty rough. I then sat down for a little bit to talk to her. We had spent 3 years together. I simply couldn't just leave just like that. So we talked for a while and I said that I just need some space. I also said that I don't know what to do in terms of our relationship. So I am officially out of her house, but I really do still miss her. And I personally want to go back, however, I know it's wrong. Would I be a massive fool if I returned? What should I do? This whole situation is just super sketchy. Your girlfriend is doing illegal substances. That's a big red flag for me personally, and that is a personal deal breaker. And she assaulted you twice. I can't think of any legitimate reason to smack your partner in the face aside from maybe self-defense. And it's not like you said anything horrific. All you jokingly said was to just get another job. And then she goes off the handle and smacks you in the face. Like, that is not okay. And then she smacks you again in the face after you give her your key to the house. I don't care what influence she was under, that is not acceptable. So even though it's hard, I think in all honesty, it's probably time to move on. It doesn't sound like a super healthy relationship, and I think you can do a lot better. I can't wait to finally get away from my family. Firstly, I'll say I didn't have a terrible childhood. I did get the occasional spanking, usually for a bad grade, and it was definitely enough for me to close myself off a lot. Not only to them, but to any close relationships that have tried to crop up in my life between me and anyone really. I'm now in college and I do have to rely on my family somewhat, but before I ever ask for anything, I have the conversation in my head. I envision all possible outcomes, and most of those conversations end in negative responses. Because of that, I end up putting off the call or the question for days, not wanting to face it. I can only ever tell my family good news. I can only say that I'm making good grades or that I landed an internship, not that I eat barely once a day or that I'm suffering from depression. Anytime I say that, they ask me, well, what are you sad about? Once I do, if ever, find the courage to call for something I need or can't afford with my part-time job, it's either an okay from them or I get an entire lecture about how lazy I am, all because I opted to only have one job instead of two while I go to school. They also like to say that I act like a child. Meanwhile, they keep my 21-year-old dropout brother well-fed and they do whatever he needs without any question. Also, my younger brother is only 1 year younger than me. He doesn't have any mental or physical issues. He is just taking advantage of the system, I guess. I just can't wait until I graduate and can survive without them. I go to a relatively good school and surprise, surprise, I'm surrounded by the exact opposite. People's parents practically throw money at them and come to see them, actually care about their well-being, the good and the bad. I hate that I even have to go home to see them sometimes. It starts out good, I'm happy to see them and they me, but eventually it gets into questions about what I plan to do after graduating, and that I better not be back here in my hometown if I get a job lined up. I wasn't able to get a job for the first year or so of college, and they assume it'll be that way once I get my degree. They can't seem to grasp that the modern world isn't as easy as walking into the nearest corporation and just getting a job. Honestly, I'm just exhausted with all of this, and I'm not sure what to do. It really sucks that you come from a family that's super nosy and is super judgmental on what you are or are not doing. But honestly, just keep your goal in sight. Graduating doesn't solve all your problems. There's still going to be issues of making money, finding your own place to live, and a lot of other things that'll come about that you probably didn't expect. But just keep your mind focused on your goal, get good grades, and do everything in your power to establish your future. And then one day you're going to look up and you're going to be completely independent. And you'll realize that no, you don't need their help with everything that comes your way. And that will be a beautiful day in your life. And I think in your situation, you'll probably find some peace you haven't felt in a very long time. My girlfriend said that she would rather be cheated on than yelled at. And I'm not sure if that's a red flag or not. Me and my girlfriend of 8 months had our first big fight yesterday. We were both pretty respectful, and while tones were annoyed and angry, no one really raised their voice. We talked it through afterwards and discussed boundaries around conflicts and how to handle things. She opened up about some issues from her childhood. The biggest thing was that her dad yelled all the time, and this was in a pretty bad, scary kind of way, I guess. She was trying to tell me that she can't be in a relationship where there's regular yelling, which I totally respect. I don't want that either. But then she said that she would rather be cheated on than yelled at. I was a little taken back by this, as that's a pretty strange statement to make. I firmly believe that outside of abuse, cheating is the most horrible kind of betrayal and the worst thing partners can do to each other. It makes me unnerved to think that she doesn't see it that way, almost like she doesn't agree how serious infidelity is. And that seems like a pretty big thing to be misaligned on. I didn't push her on it at the time because she was a bit emotional from talking about her childhood stuff, but my mind keeps going back to it. Is it just an exaggeration to make her point that yelling is a deal breaker for her? Should I even care if we don't agree on what the worst thing is? Or should I ask her to clarify just a little bit more as to what she meant and then just let it it go. What should I do? I think the girlfriend was just exaggerating a little bit on how badly she does not want to be yelled at. Like, I totally understand where she's coming from when she says that being yelled at is a very big trigger for her and it'll cause a lot of damage to her. But I honestly don't think she was being serious when she said that she would rather be cheated on than yelled at. I think she was honestly just trying to show how severe that type of behavior is towards her personally. I think if you asked her, she would also say that, yeah, cheating on me is also a terrible thing. I really don't think this is a situation where you can measure one as worse than the other. I think you're kind of splitting hairs at that point, but I think instead she was just trying to make a point, if that makes sense. The biggest lesson to be learned from this is that she sees yelling as a horrible act and that she sees it as an aggressive act at that. Her father was incredibly abusive towards her, and the fact that this is associated with childhood trauma is not something that she's going to easily shake. It's going to take time and effort on both your parts. So I wouldn't worry about what she isn't saying in this situation. She just really does not like being yelled at, and at least moving forward, you know what her trigger is, and you can find ways to avoid it. My mother-in-law snuck into my apartment and into my bedroom and gently woke up my husband, and I'm honestly not okay with this. For some context, my in-laws have a vacation home an hour and a half away from all of our primary residences. This home is divided into two sections, their home below and ours is on the second floor. My husband is one of two children, and we pay for all of our expenses. From electricity to water to the taxes, it's all on us. Now, I've been sick for a week. I fell asleep on the outside couch because I needed to sleep sitting up. It was horrible trying to stay asleep sitting up, so I was exhausted. Around 4 a.m., I woke up and, missing my bed, went back to my room to snuggle with my husband. Of course, I had a little bit of a tough time getting to sleep. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I was knocked out. This bliss was temporary. Less than 4 hours later, I am startled to see my mother-in-law laughing like a sneaky child at Christmas, trying to wake up my husband. I just stared at her in complete shock. Her explanation was that she had a bad dream about him. She had heard me at 4 in the morning and knew I had gone to my room to sleep, but felt entitled enough to wake me up after only 4 hours of sleep in our apartment, in our bedroom. I told my husband that I was beyond pissed off. I told him that we need to pay more rental-wise so that she doesn't feel entitled to pull this kind of garbage. Her obsession with my husband is real. You would think after 35 years, she'd get over not having her baby at her beck and call. The way she treats her son is a known joke amongst everyone in the family, including the younger sibling who is incredibly resentful, and rightfully so. My husband thinks she had a moment of insanity and that I need to let it go, but I am not prepared to let this woman come in and out of our apartment whenever she wants. What should I do? Your husband needs a serious reality check. His mom sneaking into a grown man's bedroom while his wife is literally in bed with him is incredibly creepy and uncalled for. The husband absolutely needs to step up and say something, and the original poster is absolutely not in the wrong here. I would be enraged if my in-laws snuck in on me while I was sleeping next to my significant other. There would be no good excuse for that type of behavior. That's a complete violation of privacy, and it would absolutely not stand. At this point, I would honestly change the locks and make it very clear to these people that no, you cannot come into my home whenever you want unannounced. Both of my parents are cheating on each other. So I'm a 14-year-old guy, and there's a few things you need to know about me before I tell you about my situation. I'm in high school. I did skip a few years because it wasn't necessary for me. I have a twin brother, and I'm really handy with technology. One day, my dad gave me his phone for some reason, and his messages just happened to be open. Then a suspicious contact caught my eye. It was completely deleted, but the next message was as if they had continued a previous message. That's where all hell began. I was curious and waited for a few days, then looked at the message again. I know that this was wrong, but I was curious and I couldn't hold it in. And that's when I found out that my dad is cheating. This was about 5 months ago. About a month later, my mom gives me her old phone as she is getting a new phone. She deleted her chat app as she gives it to me, but for some reason it isn't gone. I don't really know how that happened, but in this chat app, I see this person messaging my mom, and my mom calls him darling and whatnot. And honestly, I'm utterly distraught. I have been holding this in for about 4 months. Every time we spend time together, I can't help but believe that all of this is fake. I can't look at my parents the same. I don't see the role model dad anymore. There's nothing that holds our family together. Obviously, they both think that they are doing a great job hiding it, but it's so painful. I feel like I'm a balloon that's about to pop, and I can't hold out anymore. I have had panic attacks for the past 2 weeks over this, and I simply can't believe that this is happening to me. What should I do? There's a small chance that your parents have an open relationship. That basically means that they have relationships besides each other, if you know what I mean. And it sounds like they're just trying to hide it from you. But there's also the very distinct possibility that this is not what's happening, and they both happen to be just cheating on each other. In which case, I'm so sorry this is happening. It sounds like talking to your parents might be out of the picture, obviously, but there's always a chance that you could talk to the school counselor or even a trusted teacher and try and go through this with them. Eventually, though, this is a conversation that you're probably going to need to have with your parents, and it might help to have another adult in the room with you. I can only imagine how you're feeling right now, and honestly, I wish you the best of luck in trying to navigate this. Today, I messed up by jokingly suggesting that my parents should get a divorce, and now they're going through with it. My mom and dad have been married for 28 years. My mom has never liked my dad's drinking. They've always fought over it since I was a kid, but it would usually be limited to just then. My dad is in the army, and in my country, it's a tradition for officers to gather at the mess almost every night and drink. Now, my dad is a relative lightweight, so he would sometimes embarrass mom at parties with his slurring and stumbling, and it was at these kinds of get-togethers that I saw my first fights between my mom and my dad about his drinking. He's continued this practice at home, and although he doesn't drink too much at once, mom would get mad at dad every night he was wasted. She has this terrible anger in which she can really make you feel like garbage with just her words. So facing this every time he had a drink made my dad start to do this behind her back. Eventually, of course, he was found out, and the fights escalated to being about him lying. Please also note that my parents have always been very loving to each other and me. Their only major fights are about drinking. I was in attendance during their latest fight. It started off with mom raging at dad because he appeared a little tipsy, and then he got angry back at her. My dad is normally a very calm person, but recently I've noticed him getting very angry when defending his drinking. This time he lost it again and started going off about other flaws my mom has and how he doesn't criticize her for them. It got to a point where they both seemed to say that they loathed each other. Now, I still thought they cared for each other and were letting their emotions get to them, so I suggested, if you both really hate each other so much, why don't you just get a divorce? To my shock, they both quickly agreed and continued talking about how they do it. A full day has passed since then, and they haven't said a word to each other. I've tried talking to both of them individually, and they seem to have a lot more hatred for each other now, and I can't help but feel like I massively escalated their fight with my suggestion. What do I do? I want to first say that this is definitely not your fault. There's nothing that you really can do. It seems like these two were kind of on that path anyways, and they probably just needed someone besides either of them to say it. There's also the possibility that they've been having this discussion privately without you around, and now that their kid has suggested it, they can probably now talk about it openly. And it really sucks that it has to go to this, but honestly, it sounds like both of your parents have something to work on. So no, this is not your fault. You didn't mess up. This has most likely been happening in the background without you knowing about it, and it was only a matter of time until it got brought up. Today I messed up by accidentally spilling water on my $200 keyboard. At the Christmas of 2019 and 2020, I was gifted an elite gaming keyboard, and at the time it cost $200. It was a great keyboard, and I had pretty much no issues for the 2.5 years that I had it. However, earlier today, I accidentally spilled a full to the brim cup of water on it, and the keys on this particular keyboard don't come off, so if water gets on them, you can't really clean it up. Not just that, but the water also seeped into the keys, so every time I click a specific key, it would launch water into the area around it. Because of this technicality, I am looking into getting a new keyboard that has replaceable keys. It's made all of this so much worse though because of how much this keyboard cost, and the fact that it was a gift. I know this could be so much worse than it really is, but I basically just poured $200 down the drain. When it's plugged in, it completely freaks out and opens multiple windows, and as a result of the water damage, that means it pretty much has no resale value other than being a piece of scrap metal. And because it's just over 2 years old, I can't get a replacement as the warranty is going to be voided. I am currently using a really terrible $15 keyboard, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. So what's the moral of the story? Don't put full cups of liquid on your desk right next to your expensive gaming equipment, especially if you're prone to clumsiness like me. I've done something like this, and let me tell you, that is a painful lesson to learn, and an expensive one at that. But the silver lining here is the fact that you didn't buy that keyboard and it was just a gift, which is honestly both a blessing and a curse, because on one side, you didn't have to spend any money to buy it, but on the other, you don't get to enjoy the keyboard that somebody else bought you that is clearly a really good keyboard. I'm also really surprised that the keys don't come off the keyboard. Like, I'm sure if you looked it up online, there's probably a way to take the keys off the keyboard. And also, there's a chance it might not be completely unusable. If you dry it out and really take like an air compressor and try and get all the water out of it, it might still work, but from the sounds of it, you might be up a creek without a paddle. My entitled mother thinks she can come over to the RV that I bought from her and take stuff as she pleases, and frankly, I'm sick of it. My mom and I both live in an RV resort. She bought a lot there 3 years ago and recently bought a second one. She couldn't get financing for it, so I co-signed on the condition that I got to buy the first place from her while she moved into the second place. Both places are on one loan and we both pay a certain amount towards it. By the time I moved in, most of her stuff was moved out. She did leave a bunch of stuff behind, so I went through everything and got rid of a lot of stuff and kept some things for myself. I thought that the fact that I bought the place and she left a bunch of stuff behind meant that it all belonged to me now, right? Apparently though, I was wrong. A couple of weeks ago, I got home from work and my patio umbrella was gone. It is a $400 umbrella and she wanted to keep it. I threw a bit of a fit and so she gave me a different umbrella that she had. I was still mad because it was a terrible one compared to the one that I did have, and it didn't work as well. And in fact, it actually just broke last week. But I ended up dropping it because I didn't want to fight about it. Then the TV at her new place broke. I said she could have the one she left behind because I was planning on getting a bigger one, but I asked her if she could wait until I got the new one. 2 days later, lo and behold, after I got home from work, the TV was gone. Then last week, I had a lady who I've never met knock on my door and say that my mom sent her and that my mom told her that she could have these concrete steps that I don't use. She measured the steps and they weren't the right size, so she didn't take them at the time. But those are my steps and not hers to give away. Yeah, they're just sitting on my patio untouched, but it's still mine. But again, just like the umbrella, I let it go because I didn't want to start a fight. But last night when I got home from work, I guess it was the straw that broke the camel's back. When I got home from work, the plastic kiddie pool that my dog liked to lay in was completely gone. It was her dog's pool, but she left it here and my dog has been loving it. I feel stupid for getting so mad over a $5 pool, but she keeps taking things off of my property without asking me first. This morning I went over to her place and I took back the pool, and I was thinking about taking back the umbrella too, but I would need another person to help me move it. I sent her a long text message too, saying that she can't just take stuff without asking, and that it's my stuff and not hers anymore. I would lock my door so she can't get in, but she comes over and lets my dog out from his kennel, and she takes him to her place to play with her dog for a few hours, so my dog is only kenneled for a short period of time. But it's not fair for her to take my things without asking. What should I do? It sounds like you need to find someone else to babysit your dog. The fact that she's taking things without asking you first is a big violation of privacy, so I don't blame you in the slightest for being so upset about this. You can also take everything that she left at your place and drop it off at her door. That might just solve your problem of her coming over and getting stuff without asking. I think it's also safe to assume at this point, and you've got to know this, that just because she left it at your house doesn't necessarily mean that she's let it go. It sounds like she just got really lazy when she was moving and she didn't try hard enough to get all of her stuff. So yeah, just drop it off at her house and find another babysitter for your dog, because having someone snoop around your house and take things without asking is a terrifying feeling, and no one needs to deal with that. My wife has been lying to me about having seizures for nearly 2 years. I just confirmed that my wife of nearly 2 years has been faking seizures and using it as an excuse to avoid responsibilities. To preface this, my wife and I both suffer from a few diagnosed mental illnesses, and even after this, I still love her. About a year and a half ago, my wife had a supposed seizure that resulted in her collapsing on the floor unconscious with no response. Since then, she has had seizures with some level of regularity, especially when presented with any kind of difficulty or responsibility. If we ever need to have a difficult talk, she would have a seizure. If she needed to go to work, she would have a seizure. If I needed her to help me clean the house, she would have a seizure. If she was unable to have anything her way, or if she was in any way inconvenienced, guess what? She would pretend to have a seizure. The doctors diagnosed her with psychogenic non-epileptic seizures that were triggered with stressful situations. So I did my best to do everything to support her during these episodes. I became so stressed about her hurting herself by having a seizure while working at a very high stress job that I had a full mental breakdown and got admitted to the hospital because of it. Since then, I have been trying to be the best caregiver possible and support her fully while sacrificing my health to ensure her safety and happiness. I believe that I have known for some time that something was off about her seizures. She would seemingly come out of them if I made her laugh or smile, but I wanted to trust her and believe her no matter what. Tonight, I finally asked her about why she faked a seizure she had, and she admitted that all of them were fake. I appreciated her coming clean, but my God, am I angry. All that effort, love, care, patience, it was all for nothing. But in the end, I still love her and I want to be with her. But this is something that I can't just get over. What should I do? This is divorce material to me. This is a huge lie. Seizures overall can be incredibly dangerous. And the fact that she was lying about this for nearly 2 years is more than enough for me to say, okay, we're getting a divorce. I can't believe this original poster is in any way, shape, or form deciding to stick with this lady. This lady sounds absolutely insane. And there's no way for a second I would put up with that. The original poster goes on to say that they are both in individual as well as couples therapy to try and figure this out ever since they found out that, hey, she doesn't actually have seizures. So maybe the original poster is just a better man than me because I would have kicked this lady to the curb almost immediately. This is a massive lie. Like, it'd be different if she's like, hey, I'm allergic to eggs. And then you spend a few years being like, okay, let's not have eggs. But in reality, she just didn't like the taste. Like, it would be a weird lie, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, whatever. But this is a whole nother level of crazy that I have not seen, I think, ever. So no, I would not stay with her if I were that guy, because this is just absolutely unacceptable. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in their situation? I demanded that my sister move out after she disrespected me, but this house does not belong to me, and now I don't know what to do. My dad passed away 5 years ago. Before he passed on, he left us a home and a piece of land that he put under my name, and the house was on my mom's name. We were in debt, not a lot, and the land was bigger than the house. After my dad passed away, I had talked to my mom, and we decided it was best to sell the house and pay off all of our debts. I would finish my studies and try to build another house in that barren land. That area was developing and value was going up. My mom is a 3-time stroke survivor who's now in a wheelchair because she had an accident a few months ago. I joined work soon after my dad's passing. I have an uncle I'm close to, and with his help, I was able to construct a 3-storied building. As my dad was no longer around, I decided that it was not fair that I get the building all to myself. My mom and dad had a loving marriage. My mom was devastated and talked to me about my siblings' future. I assured her that it was my responsibility now to take care of my siblings and her. I was talking to split the building in the future. Here's the problem. My sister considers herself a Disney princess. When it comes to responsibility, she won't lift a finger. She blasts loud music until we receive a noise complaint, and she will disrespect my mom as well as myself. Continuously, she will ask for money even though we give her an allowance. She's friends with my ex-girlfriend who cheated on me as well. She even knew about this at the time, but decided not to tell me because she said it was cool and it happens all the time, whatever that means. I ultimately decided that if she wanted to stay, she must cease disrespecting me and mom inside of my house. She yelled that it was her house too, as dad left it. I told her that dad left us the land, but I made the home. And after that, I basically told her that she needs to move out by next year. My mom was saddened to hear this. We're immigrants in this country, and my mom is worried about her safety and doesn't want her to leave. I told her that she must. I can't take the disrespect anymore. I told her that I will try and find some work for her so she can at least try and make a living instead of living off of my money and yelling at me. I pay for literally everything. Taxes, bills, groceries, loan payments, education, car loan, you name it. I can't afford to give her over $1,000 each month just so she can spend it however she wants. My sister then told me that my girlfriend was right to cheat on me and that I am a complete piece of garbage. My mom goes on to tell me that she's worried, saying that I was out of line for asking her to move out. I don't know the right course of action I should take now. She's become a spoiled child. Is there any way I can handle this without anyone getting hurt? It sounds like your sister needs to grow up. That's kind of the first thing that came to mind for me. But also, if this isn't actually your house and you don't specifically own it, then you can't really make the call of who can and can't live there. I can totally understand you being frustrated with it, but at the end of the day, it's not your house, right? Regardless of the outcome, hopefully it gets worked out, and hopefully this is able to get worked out in an amicable way. I am becoming unreasonably annoyed by my boyfriend, and I don't know what to do about this. We met from a dating app, and things went smoothly for us from the beginning, and after 2 weeks of knowing each other and hanging out in real life, we made it official at the start of this month. What I'm starting to notice though is that he wants me around 24/7, and even if I'm not around, he would video call me, which really annoys me. I told him this and he said, okay, take your time, which I did. A few days ago, I told him I'm gonna take a me day at home with my sister. I watched a movie with my sister at 8 o'clock, and after that at 10 o'clock, I checked my phone and saw his messages asking me if I'm busy and what I'm doing. He also called me 3 times. I told him I was watching a movie and he got mad because he wanted to watch that movie with me. I told him that we can still watch the movie together, and he said that it's fine. He'll just watch the movie by himself. A few minutes later, he said in a tweet that he's just so tired of everything. So I texted him about it and he said nothing, It's fine. And at that moment, I was just so fed up because I think it's childish to not communicate with your partner, but then turn around and say really vague things online that are definitely about me. He later confirmed to me that yes, that tweet was about what happened between us. We made up after that, but I once again told him that I cannot always be available for him. The fact that he also has nothing going on in his life really bothers me. He's been in this town for 2 years. He moved here because of his job. He's a freelancer, but he has no friends, no routines. He's unable to take good care of his body, and it seems like he just doesn't even try. I have a whole life before I met him, so I need him to be independent and also have his own things when I'm busy with my own things. I've even asked him to meet my friends, thinking that maybe he can also be friends with them, but he refused. Every time there's a chance to meet somebody new or to start a new hobby, he just straight up refuses. He's kind of big and not physically fit, and his skin condition is not in a good state right now. I didn't mind this until he mentioned that he wants someone that is pretty and looks good, and that the reason why he swiped right on me is because I'm pretty, and he even told me that he hopes that I never get fat. He apparently hates on fat people, and I just feel like he's very mean to other people online in general. I confronted him about it, and he said he's trying to be better. He told me that he wants me to take care of him, which at first I was like, of course I'll take care of you, thinking that taking care of him means having his back and being there for him. In reality, it actually means babying him and basically doing all kinds of chores and other activities to specifically take care of him. Now, just to be clear and to have some clarification in this, I don't mind doing all these things if we were in a relationship for several years, or even if we lived together, but as of right now, that is definitely not the case. Today I was working out and he kept messaging me saying, why is my workout session so long? Mind you, I was only in there for 30 minutes. So after I was done working out, I asked him, okay, how long do you work out when you used to work out? And he told me that 15 minutes is enough, 30 minutes max, claiming that 1 hour is way too long to work out. And after he said that, boy was I angry. I work as a physical therapist, and I've been working out for several years now. He's literally not doing anything all day. He's been sleeping in and maybe doing a little bit of work. He hasn't fed himself, he hasn't showered, and he actually is going to try and tell me that my 1 hour workout session is too long, and he's the one telling me to please never get fat. Honestly, I just don't know what to do anymore. Now every time I see his face or his name, I will get extremely annoyed, even if he's not doing anything wrong. I also feel like he just wants me around because he needs me, not because he actually wants me. I'm a firm believer that you cannot give the love that you do not have for yourself. And this guy hates himself. So the kind of affection that I want from him is not the kind of affection that I'm getting, and also not in the same quality of what I've been giving him. I need another person's perspective in this situation because I am really not sure what to do. The guy that you're with sounds super lazy. He just sits around all day, doesn't take a shower, doesn't work out, doesn't do anything with his life, and then expects you to just wait on him and do everything for him. And I think you have it right. I don't think he's showing the same affection that you are clearly trying to show him. He needs to get his act together because he's about to lose his girlfriend. So from her perspective, I absolutely understand where she's coming from. He is not taking the initiative. He's not doing anything with his life. And honestly, the way he's acting and the fact that he said, I hope you never get fat and stuff like that is really, really weird and kind of a red flag, to be honest. And it's not like you've been in this relationship for a very long time. So I totally understand where you're coming from, and I wish you the best of luck in trying to work this out if that's what you still want to do. My brother tricked me into crashing a graduation where he was unwanted, and now I don't know what to do. My brother was part of a months-long fellowship that turned bad towards the end. He's been dealing with a lot of stress and emotional problems this year, and I've done my best to support him. The fellowship ended poorly because of various conflicts with the program director and the other fellows. He was asked to step away, but was told he could attend the graduation. Then suddenly, the very week of the graduation, they told him he couldn't attend. Then they went back and said he could attend if he was on his best behavior. I don't condone the flip-flopping of the program, but it became obvious that no one really wanted him at the graduation, fellows and leaders alike. When Friday came around, I left early from work, telling everyone I was going to my brother's graduation. I go home, get ready, and myself, my brother, and my mom all get into a cab. Once we were in the cab, my brother divulges that he received a text last night saying that the graduation was canceled. He said verbatim, I have deceived you. You can choose to get out now or we can get going. I make the choice to stay and go along with it, not wanting to abandon my mom to the reckless plan of showing up at a graduation that was allegedly canceled. When we got to the first location, I even went up the stairs, rang the bell, and spoke to the person who lived there. They said the graduation address had changed, but she was happy to give it to me. Long story short, we get on the train and go to the second address, and thus finally arriving at the actual place the graduation is happening. We all crashed it, and my brother got his moment. He calls it supposed justice that he was able to show up despite all the trickery that they used to try and keep him away. But I don't see it as justice. I see it as a cringy, vengeful stunt. And I felt this way from the moment I chose to go along with it, as well as when I got the correct address. But I am ashamed of the role I played, and I'm ashamed that I couldn't break away when I should have. I was torn between wanting to make my brother happy and wanting to protect my mom if things went south. We've been fighting ever since, because he thinks everything he did was justified. I think I've reached my breaking point though. I've never been tricked like that, and especially not by someone who I trusted. He is now upset that I said I could never trust him again. He says that I am painting him as a deceitful and untrustworthy person when that's apparently not his character. I don't know how to move on from this, and I don't want him in my life anymore. I am working towards getting my own place again, but in the interim, I don't know how to make him understand that his actions weren't okay and that I have lost my trust and respect in him, probably for the rest of my life. What do I do? I think it's totally fair to say that you don't want him in your life, and you can try and start making steps to remove him from your life as best you can, even if you're living under the same roof. Being tricked like that is not a good feeling. I've been in that situation where I've been deceived by those I care about the most, and it really does sting and burn, and it really upsets you because they are the people that you would assume would never do this to you. So I 100% know where you're coming from, and I don't blame you for feeling so hurt. I think if this really is the last straw for you and there's no way you're going to trust him ever again, you can start to make small changes that basically make it clear that no, you are not a trusted person in my life anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can choose who you do and don't want in your life. And based on the way your brother tricked you, I don't blame you for deciding that enough is enough and that he has got to go. Today I messed up by off-roading a scooter in South Lake Tahoe. This happened a couple of hours ago. My immediate family, myself, and my boyfriend are visiting South Lake Tahoe for the holiday weekend. For a little backstory, I'm not an athletic person anymore. I used to be fantastic at any sport I tried, but after high school, I have kind of let myself go. I still have confidence in myself, while still maintaining that I can do anything mentality, despite having little to no muscle tone, and a change in center of gravity due to being more than 40 pounds overweight. All of this I have gained over the past few years. My family has dwindled over the years to now include only myself, my dad, and my mom, and my grandfather. So when we join my family on vacations with my family, my boyfriend and I usually go off and leave the folks to relax at the condo while we do something that is more geared towards our age and less towards theirs. So today, our second day in Tahoe, we had a long day of getting breakfast at a local joint, hiking some of the scenic spots like Emerald Bay or Cave Rock, until we could really tell we were at a higher elevation than we are used to, and our lungs were hurting. We ended up grabbing a late lunch, and it was time to relax at that point. We had seen all these kids and adults riding around on scooters in the area, and they were parked on every street corner. We downloaded the apps, picked up a couple of scooters with a decent charge on them, and decided to find a place to smoke the herb, if you know what I mean. We rode around for a while, and let me tell you, those things are quick and way more fun than I thought they would be. Finally, we came across a dusty walking path fairly close to where we were staying, and it was a perfect spot to stop and hang out. No one around, the path was just a small loop, and you could see both entrances from the middle, while having some brush cover to keep us hidden from prying eyes. We scooted on down the fairly smooth trail until we thought we were far enough away from everything, parked our vehicles, and sparked up. Overall, it went pretty well. It was a good time, and so we decided to head back. We loaded up and set back down the trail. Like I said, it was sort of a circular loop, so we went the opposite direction of where we came in to finish the loop. For some reason, I was able to get my scooter booted up faster than my boyfriend did, and I took off at a rather high speed. I kind of noticed it was more bumpy than before, but the herb from earlier, if you know what I mean, was slightly starting to affect my motor skills, as well as lowering my inhibitions. The path started to weave between these bushy tree-like things, and as I was zigging and zagging between them, I hit a bump and collided with one of the trees. I hit the tree head on, going way faster than I should have been. I was flung to the right, the scooter went to the left, and my right knee collided with the only rock sticking 5 inches out of the ground. My boyfriend came through and found me, and after some moaning and groaning, he helped me back to my feet. I already have a bum right wrist, and I had twisted my right ankle hard on one of the hikes earlier, and now I have a killer bruise and 6 more days of hiking, biking, and scooting to get through before we can really rest and heal. real. I rode around on the scooter slowly after the PTSD wore off, mainly because I couldn't walk all the way to the dinner restaurant with the pain in my leg. I think I've regained a little bit of confidence, but I have my fingers crossed it doesn't swell up too much. Our next stop is Yosemite, and I just have to ride the bikes through the valley. I will be super disappointed if I miss it. This is actually a really funny story because those scooters that are being described in this are no joke. Those things can go so fast, and the fact that they flung off of it and didn't break a bone, but instead just had like a swollen joint or just kind of got a bruise is kind of a miracle, because I have firsthand experience of watching my friends absolutely eat it on one of those things, and they did not get up nearly as fast as this person did. So good on them for walking away from this injury, and thankfully nothing got broken. My entitled parents and my spoiled, rotten brother got thrown out of a child's birthday party because they asked the stupidest thing imaginable. My little brother is spoiled rotten, and he does not handle going to other birthday parties that are not about him. And while myself as well as my family have put up with this kind of behavior, it does not go well for people outside the family. This happened when my brother was 6 or 7 years old. A neighborhood boy down the street was having a birthday party, and my brother got invited because they are sort of friends. But if I'm being completely honest, he probably only got invited because they knew my parents would bring a gift. And they did. I don't remember what it was though, nor do I really care. My parents dragged me along to this party, even though I would have rather stay home and played video games instead. I was bored and sitting down almost the entire time, so I got to witness an absolute train wreck of a situation. It started when my brother was caught picking up gifts off the table and shaking them. The mother of the birthday boy told him to stop, and my parents tried to defend my brother and say he was harmless. But this particular lady knew exactly what my brother really was like, and she had my parents move him away from the presents. Off to the side, there were some kids trying to play some games, but my brother interfered with just about every game, trying to make himself the center of attention. With each game they chose to play, the birthday boy got to pick first because it was his birthday, and because of that, my brother freaked out because he didn't get to go first. And my parents even asked the birthday boy's mother if my spoiled rotten brother could have the first picks on some of the games they were playing. The lady not only refused, but told my parents to get my brother under control or we'd be asked to leave. And it was at that point that the cake came out. The mother lit the candles for the birthday boy, and the adults started singing the happy birthday song. They only got as far as singing the birthday boy's name in the song before my brother burst into a tantrum at the table. He grabbed the side of the table and started trying to violently shake it. My parents had to hold my brother back for a moment, and then I saw my mom go up and talk to the mother of the birthday boy again about something regarding her son. And the poor lady looked positively disgusted, and I would later learn that my mother asked this lady to let my spoiled younger brother blow out the candles first, and then they could just redo it. The lady told my mother that it would be best if we left, and then they went back to trying to redo the birthday song. Well, my brother couldn't take it and ran to the table and shoved the whole cake right at the birthday boy. I mean, he used his arm to literally clothesline the cake and heave it right into that poor kid's face. The whole room was silent for a few seconds, and then a bunch of the kids started laughing. Then the birthday boy started crying, and the adults were just mortified, except for my parents. My mother just started hugging my brother tightly and acting like a Karen by saying this could have been prevented if they just let my brother blow out the candles first. The mother of the birthday boy was cleaning up chocolate cake off of her son and screamed at my parents to get out. The other kids there started crying too because it finally hit them that they were not getting any cake. My mother started dragging my brother out, but he broke free from her and then pushed over the table with all the presents on it. I grabbed him and held him in a headlock till my parents grabbed him and were able to get him under control. I apologized profusely to the mother of the birthday boy and said I wasn't on my parents' side in this matter. And at the time I was 12 years old, and I simply could not believe that I was apologizing on behalf of my parents. My dad yelled to me to get moving or I could walk home, and so I said I would just walk home. It was literally a quarter mile down the street. I stayed and helped clean up the mess my brother made. The lady thanked me and said that I was a good egg, but my brother was just rotten. Someone went out and got another cake while the birthday boy had to take a shower because he was absolutely covered in cake. All of the mess was cleaned up and they redid the birthday song. After the party was over, the mother of the birthday boy wrote something out on on a piece of paper. It was a handwritten invoice to my parents for the destroyed cake, along with a written threat to call the police as someone there with a camera caught everything. I handed the invoice to my parents, and they really didn't look happy when they read it. They then gave me the cash and told me to take it back to the lady. So I did, and that was pretty much it. Neither that kid or his family ever associated with my brother or my parents ever again. Fun fact about this story, this comes from the same original poster, who previously in another video talked about his spoiled rotten brother who never allowed him to have any birthday parties of his own. So this kind of behavior based on that previous video absolutely makes sense. How on earth could anybody raise a monster like that? This kid is still young. You can still correct this behavior. This kid is only 6 or 7 years old. How do you allow it to get that bad that quickly? I really feel bad for the birthday boy that got absolutely smothered in cake, and I'm actually really proud that the mom stepped up and told those people to get lost, because this birthday was not about that spoiled rotten kid, but rather about her own son. And I cannot believe that this mom of this spoiled rotten kid actually went up to this lady and asked if her spoiled son could blow out the candles first on this kid's birthday. That is absolute madness to me. So the lesson to be learned here is the fact that you should not let your kids dictate what you can and can't do as a parent. Otherwise, you're going to raise some spoiled brat who's going to throw cake in the birthday boy's face and start destroying things, all because he's not getting his way. Am I the jerk for grabbing one too many rolls of toilet paper? I recently bought the family a whole pack of toilet paper, which was 30 to 40 rolls, because my dad forgot his wallet at the store, so I just paid for it. My dad says he'll pay me back the $25 eventually, which I doubt, but regardless, it's for family. So I know that most likely I probably won't see that money again. Our family is made up of about 8 people, my parents, my siblings, my mom's parents, and we have 3 bathrooms in total, with my parents having a private bathroom and my grandparents with their own, and me and my 3 siblings sharing one bathroom. This morning, I grabbed a roll of toilet paper from my mom's closet, and she started berating me on why I'm grabbing another roll since we just grabbed one yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was 2 days ago for the record, and she says that one roll is supposed to last 1 week for me and my 3 siblings. I told her, okay, what do you want me to do then? And instead of answering me, she kept screaming at me about how and why I need another roll. So I responded and said, well, I paid for all this, so why not just pay me back then? I meant this as a rhetorical question, so she can understand that if someone is wasting money, it's me and not her. But instead, she started screaming at me until my dad came in. She then started crying and telling my dad that this whole week I was charging her for the toilet paper rolls. Just a note, no, I did not charge her or even ask her for the money, because topics like this always upset her to the point where she stops talking to me. This was the first time I ever even mentioned money, but I wasn't being serious. I was being sarcastic, and my dad knew it too and told her just to calm down. Now she's going to threaten me and give me the silent treatment this week, and apologizing won't help, because the last time I tried apologizing, she yelled at me and told me to not speak to her. So help me out. Am I the jerk in this situation? You are not the jerk in this situation. Your mom sounds absolutely unhinged. Like she's freaking out over toilet paper that you bought. It's pretty obvious to me that she has some other issues going on, so I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Like, I'm willing to assume that you love your mom, but if this is how she acts at any moment of confrontation, then honestly, getting the silent treatment might be your best option. Am I the jerk for lighting my parents' bathtub on fire? When I was an 11th grade high school student, I hated shopping for deodorants, as I would have to go to a different store than where I got my weekly groceries, because that one didn't have the kind that I liked. So I always bought a few of these deodorant spray cans all at once, thus having supplies for about 3 to 4 months before having to go buy new ones. At that time, I discovered a new kind of deodorant that smelled way better, and so I started buying that stuff, but I still had 2 full cans of the old stuff that I used to use just laying around. I thought of ways to get rid of them, but it is explicitly written on the back that you only dispose once it's completely empty. I didn't want to just spray it out into nature, as I was assuming it would be bad for the environment. So I grab an old towel, open the big bathroom windows, sit down in front of the bathtub, and start spraying the deodorant from those cans into it, trying to catch as much of it into the fabric as possible. After a few minutes, I'm done and I stand up. The room smells strongly like the deodorant, but it wasn't too bad, as the towel did exactly what I hoped for, catching the brunt of the spray. That's when a thought pops into my mind. On the cans, they write that the stuff is flammable. Maybe I should test if I could light a short flame above the tub, like how they did with a small amount of hydrogen after splitting water in our chemistry classes. I got curious and I grabbed a lighter from my room that I sometimes play with when I'm bored. I didn't expect much to happen. After all, most of the deodorant was going in the towel, and the rest probably vented out the window already, right? I flip the lighter as I stand in front of the bathtub, and a huge flame shoots up against the wall and the ceiling, and the room suddenly gets very hot, and my first reaction is to flee into the hallway and rip the door shut behind me. I stand there for a half a second, realizing what just happened, and started panicking. Then I rushed to grab a bucket, I filled it up with a bit of water in the kitchen, and I run back to the bathroom. The fire is still burning, but as most of the gas burned away in a few seconds, the fire died down quite a bit. I throw the water into the bathtub, grab the water hose from the shower cabin next to it, and start showering the entire bathtub with water. I fully extinguish the fire, and with my nerves blank, I call my mother on the phone, as they are thankfully not at home when this happened. Now, it's important to know that we had drywalls, as we lived in a renovated attic of a multifamily house. With that in consideration, I was really lucky that they did not catch fire, and that all you could really see were some black marks on the wall. I burned the towel in the bathtub, the edge of the cabinet next to the bathtub, as well as various items on top of it, like toothbrushes and another towel. Fortunately, I had already taken out the empty cans with me when I left to grab the lighter. Otherwise, things probably would have been a lot worse. I also burned a bit of my hair, my eyebrows, my arm hair, as well as the bathrobe that I was wearing. Because of this incident, I switched to roll-on deodorant, not just because I made a fireball in the bathroom, but also because it's better for my skin. So now I'm stuck with 3.5 cans of old deodorant, as well as an almost 6-pack of newer cans, just sitting around my apartment. Either they're gonna take me out at one point, or I stick with them for the rest of my life. I didn't tell my family or friends what happened back then. Even now, only 1 or 2 of my sisters and a couple of very close friends actually know about what happened. The rest of my family, especially my mother and my stepfather, never knew the full story. I made up some ridiculous lie saying that the sun had self-ignited it somehow, and that basically all they needed to know was that I was trying to get rid of the cans of deodorant and I sprayed just a little bit too much in the bathroom, thus causing the accident. I just conveniently left out the part where I brought in a lighter to the equation. The only person to actually get to know the entire story was my therapist, which I consulted at the time, who thankfully had a good sense of humor about it, and we both had a good laugh. Had I told anyone else what actually happened back then, they might have sent me to a clinic, assuming I was actively trying to burn my house down or try and hurt somebody. Thankfully though, I've moved past that situation and will never let something like that ever happen again. That's a crazy story because I've been in that situation. I think anybody who's been in a high school locker room knows that axe plus a lighter equals a flamethrower. Only this guy decided to just make a fireball like he's playing Dungeons and Dragons. Really scary stuff. I'm glad he didn't burn his house down, and he came out of the situation still having a place to live and a roof over his head, which with all things considered is a pretty good exchange if you ask me. My girlfriend wants literally every second of my time, and I don't know what to do about it. My girlfriend always tells me that she wants to cuddle and seems to always feel like we never spend enough time together, but this just simply is not true. For example, if I ever need to try and get up and go study or draw or something, I will get a passive-aggressive response like, "Okay, whatever." Today it escalated into me getting yelled at when I told her I wanted to go finish scraping wallpaper while she slept, and she ended up telling me she wants to break up with me. Also, it literally feels like sometimes she will find the smallest thing to be upset about, whether it was a joke I made or something I said or did 5 years ago, and this is also something that I've apologized for, mind you, and while I get that it doesn't make a difference, I don't hold her to the same kind of standard. The relationship I am in feels like borderline abusive, and I feel like I'm an emotional punching bag. I feel like I've lost so much time and feel I have no time to improve my skills or learn anything new. She just wants to sit on the couch all day and sleep, and I begrudgingly sit there for her 16 hours a day while she sleeps, being extra careful not to wake her up, as that would result in being called different names for trying to get up and go do something, or if I get up, she'll just straight up yell at me. Day in and day out, it feels like her emotional needs are never ending and I have nothing left to give. It feels like I am constantly trying to save a sinking boat with a 5-gallon bucket, and making the bucket bigger hasn't helped, all while enduring endless verbal abuse, being told I am incompetent, being called stupid, told that I act like a child, told that I'm a piece of garbage, told that I never do anything to help her. I normally am pretty strong emotionally, and I don't get worn down easily, but I feel like in the past few few months, I am nearing a breaking point. I am nearing a point in which I just want to walk away from this relationship, but I haven't committed to dealing with all of the fallout and the messy breakup that will come along later. What should I do? It sounds like you really want to break up with this person, so I'm really not sure what you're waiting for. If all the things that they're doing is true, and they really are treating you like garbage, they're like not allowing you to live your own life, and they're being really abusive, then yeah, I think it might be best for you to go ahead and leave this relationship. And yeah, of course, there's going to be fallout and it's probably going to be messy, but you are genuinely going to be so much better without this type of treatment. And it's so weird that you're sitting there with your girlfriend and the fact that you get up to try and do anything, she'll freak out and start name calling you. Like, how weird is that? Who just wants to sit around for 16 hours a day and do nothing? People have lives to live. They've got stuff they need to do. It's unacceptable for her to expect you to just sit there with her. Having time with your significant other to cuddle or just to be close to each other is really important, but I can totally see where you're coming from when it starts to feel like a chore and it starts to feel like an obligation where if you don't do this, she's gonna freak out. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would have broken up with this lady about a year ago because there's no good excuse for you to be treated this way. Today I messed up by liking mangoes just a little too much. Let me just start off by saying that this is the culmination of years of stupidity, but the full impact of it only hit me this morning as I stood in the kitchen scrubbing my hands and face like my life depended on it after eating just one mango. I live in the United States, and up until 5 years ago, I had never really cared for mangoes. The big green and red ones you get at the grocery store, they just didn't quite cut it for me. I would grudgingly tolerate them in a fruit salad or whatever, but I never sought them out or ordered any food or drink that was mango flavored. Then one day in May of 2017, I heard about this variety of mango that was only really available in the late spring and early summer, and apparently this special type of mango was delicious. I had my doubts, but I found out that a local vendor was selling them, so off I went and bought a couple of these little golden hook-shaped fruits just to see what the fuss is about, and my god, it was like drinking the nectar of the gods. I had never tasted a fruit so sublime in my life. I went to the store and bought 6 more and ate all of them over the next 2 days. I was even standing over my sink with the juices running down my elbows like a barbarian, just chewing away. The next year when May rolled around, I bought 7 more of these special mangoes. The year after that, I bought 9. Every time I ate all of them within 72 hours, and every time it was a mango celebration. I would slice the mango halves off of the center pit, gnaw them right out of the skin, and then gnaw my way around the pit, scraping it with my teeth just to get it all. My face, hands, and shirt would be sticky with mango juice, and there was nothing better in the world. Because of this, I started looking forward to spring like a ritual. I'd never loved or craved a fruit this much in my life. I was addicted. The 3rd year, though, something a little weird happened. The day after eating the mangoes, the corners of my mouth were red, cracked, and painful. I freaked myself out, wondering if I had a fungal infection or something like that before remembering that I had just eaten 9 mangoes. Probably that much fruit juice had irritated my mouth a bit or something, so I just shrugged it off. So last year, I bought 4 mangoes. I was gonna take it a little more easy this time around, I thought. I ate 3 of them, the 4th one wasn't quite ripe yet, and when I woke up the next morning, the entire surface of my lips were covered in tiny, fluid-filled blisters that burst with the slightest bit of lip movement and itched like the devil himself had sent an army of mosquitoes to kiss me directly on the mouth in my sleep. I was in agony. I could barely sleep the rest of that week. The blisters itched so bad that I wanted to tear my lips off with my fingernails. They left a sticky, crusty liquid behind when they inevitably burst, and new ones kept forming where the old ones had been. I tried chapstick, Vaseline, even hydrocortisone directly on the lips in an act of desperation. Finally, I resorted to Benadryl, just so I could knock myself out long enough to get a few hours of sleep. It had to have been the mangoes. I got on the internet and learned, to my horror, that mango skins and pits have the same oil, and this oil makes poison ivy do its terrible, terrible thing. And my dad's side of the family has always had bad reactions to poison ivy. I'd never encountered poison ivy myself, but I'd been encountering the skin and peel of mangoes, enthusiastically mind you, with my lips for the past 4 years. I had been slowly sensitizing myself to this oil every year, and now it had come back to bite me in the butt. My theory was corroborated later that summer when I went for a walk in some overgrown woods, and the next day I had a blistering, painful, itching, oozing rash the size of a $50 coin on my ankle that took 2 weeks to go away. But the mangoes were so good. How could I possibly give up the mangoes? How could I have discovered something so perfect, so beautiful, beautiful, only to have it cruelly snatched away from me after only 4 years. How could I spend the rest of my life mourning what I had known and loved so briefly and then lost? So I devised a plan. This year I would buy one mango, just one. I would carefully cut the flesh away from the skin and the peel, slice it into tiny cubes, then use a fork to eat the cubes one at a time, never letting them touch my lips. And that's what I did. And it tasted as good as I remembered. But the delight was tempered by the extreme caution I was taking to not let even one drop of mango juice come into contact with the outside of my mouth. Afterwards, I scrubbed my hands like I was in surgery. Then I carefully washed my face twice. I could only wait and hope that over the next 24 hours, I wouldn't discover that I had once again condemned myself to a week of sleepless misery despite my extreme measures. It was then that it hit me. This was what the rest of my life was going to be like if I wanted to eat these mangoes. I was going to have to do this every time for every mango, and I was going to do it while remembering the utter unrestrained joy of eating 9 mangoes at once with juice running down my chin without a care in the world. I can officially say I've created my own personal hell. My man really loves his mangoes. I think he really needs to go to a doctor if I'm completely honest. As absolutely hilarious as this story is, he probably has an allergy related to mangoes that he just doesn't want to check out. I mean, I don't think I've loved anything more than this guy loves mangoes. I'm pretty sure that if he had one hand on a bag of mangoes and his other hand holding up his wife over a cliff, he would probably pick the mangoes. But if there's one thing that I've learned from this story, it's that you should find something that you love and then hold on to it for dear life. Because life's too short to cry over spilled mangoes. An entitled Karen tries to steal from my daughter at the pool, so I shut her down. So this story takes place years ago when my daughter was learning how to swim at the local pool. I had bought her a nice pair of goggles so she can see in the water while learning how to swim. There is a group of 3 or 4 kids that were playing nearby that caught her attention. The one little girl came over and was being really nice to her and started talking to her. I was very excited for her because I know making friends can be difficult. So the kids started striking up a conversation, and I noticed that my daughter took her goggles off and handed them to the little girl. The little girl then puts them on and swims away from my daughter. My daughter just kind of sat there frozen in the water looking deflated. I saw her try to go over and talk to the girls, but then they started to swim away from her, ignoring her completely. I went over to where my daughter was and I asked her what the problem was. She said that the little girl was talking to her and asked her if she could play with her, but wanted to use her goggles. So my daughter, as generous as she is, let her use the goggles. However, as soon as the little girl got her hands on the goggles, she didn't want to have anything to do with my daughter anymore. And after I saw that, I was mad. So I went over to where the little girl was and I told her that I needed the goggles back that you borrowed from my daughter. She looked at me with a nervous look on her face, but eventually she gave me the goggles back. And then the little girl swam away, going over to where I'm assuming her parents were. Of course, about 5 minutes later, the mother, whom we'll call Karen, comes over in my direction. The Karen says to me, why did you take those goggles away from my daughter? They aren't yours. I looked at her and I said, you're right. They're my daughters. She responds back with a terrible attitude saying, well, she isn't using them. She can barely swim. She should just let her use them instead of hogging them all to herself. After she said that about my daughter, I just about snapped. I then told this Karen that if she did a better job at raising her daughter, then the two of them will be sharing, playing together, and having fun. But instead, here we are, because this Karen's daughter manipulated my daughter into handing over her goggles and letting her think that they were going to play together. I told her that I didn't have time to deal with garbage human beings like her, and that she should get back to her side of the pool. She was gobsmacked. She gave me a dirty look as she walked back to her seat, and she didn't say anything after that. It definitely became apparent that my daughter felt uncomfortable after that and that she wanted to leave. For my daughter, who is honestly so innocent and a little naive, it was a pretty big pill for her to swallow, so that she could see that yes, there are terrible people in this world that will absolutely take advantage of you just to get something that you have. This lady is a hero for telling this Karen what is what. You know you're dealing with a winner when the first thing that comes out of this Karen's mouth is some kind of insult geared towards your kid. Like if you want to set off a parent, that's the best way to do it. Not only that, but she basically implied that because this kid couldn't swim, she should just give up her goggles to this random girl that she just met and let them use it. That is a proverbial nightmare, and there's no way that's appropriate. Like who just does that? Who just goes up to some random kid and says, hey, you're not using niece, give me that. You know who does do that? Bullies. And that's what this lady was. The Karen was a bully and she was raising a bully. I don't care that this was a subtle thing either. The fact that they took advantage of somebody else to benefit themselves and to then negatively affect the other person makes them a bully. So good on this mom for standing up for her daughter and saying, no, give me back the goggles and get lost. It's a shame that the daughter didn't feel comfortable to swim there anymore, but she learned a very valuable lesson. You have to stand up for yourself and you can't let anybody walk all over you. Otherwise, someone's gonna steal your goggles or a lot worse in the future. I caught my fiance cheating on me. So I was catching up with my brother and she was having her friends around. I told her that I was staying at my brother's for the night. As we were having some drinks and catching up, I noticed a guy in her Snapchat stories and I didn't think anything of it. That is until I texted her asking her how she was doing and she just completely ignored me. After about a half an hour of no contact and no text back, I tried to FaceTime her. Still, I got no answer. So I got in my car and I just went home. I parked the car down the road and walked up to our house. The bedroom windows were open and I started hearing noises from inside. My emotions took over at this point, so I ran to the door, opened it, and I saw a guy in her room with my fiance. And lo and behold, they were spending some quality time together, if you know what I mean. I looked her in the face and shouted, "How dare you do this in the house I made for us, our home?" I left the house and we have spoken very little since then. I haven't stayed at home or been back around my own house because of this. I stayed with my brother, but my heart is hurting and it is completely broken. And in my head, I keep replaying what I walked in on. And I just can't shake these feelings of betrayal and suffering. We were planning on getting married, but now I just don't know what to do. How am I supposed to get over this? I don't know that there's any way you can get over this. She completely cheated on you. Like, it's really hard to say and even just to hear this probably, but she went behind your back to go with another man to spend some quality time with them, if you know what I mean. But the silver lining behind this is the fact that you found out before you signed your life away to her. So now you know for sure who she really is, outside of the facade that she's been putting on for who knows how long. The original poster goes on to say that everything in their relationship and in their life seemed good, and then suddenly this just came out of nowhere. And that is honestly probably the worst part about this. It's the fact that he never saw this coming. And even worse, this guy built a house that they were going to live in. It really is just a massive, disgusting betrayal of trust. The original poster also mentions that he's in the process of getting her name removed from everything. That way he can move on and have nothing to do with her, which is fantastic to hear, because no one in their right mind deserves to have that kind of treatment, especially from someone they would have called their fiance and future wife. My boyfriend wants me to choose between him or my final exam. My boyfriend and I have been together for 9 years, and we mostly get along together. But during our last quarrels, during the last few years, I have noticed a resentment towards him from me. It feels like he doesn't really value me anymore. As soon as he gets angry, he starts to take a lecturing tone and wants to teach me how to behave better, and he always succeeds in making the fault mine and never his. But if I tell him this, he gets even more angry. Yesterday evening, we had a big fight that has been going on and is still going on today. It started when I sat down to drink coffee after handing in a big assignment for my university class. I accidentally slipped and spilled coffee all over me. This caused me to scream and curse rather loudly. He then got really angry with me and screamed at me to not shout so loud. I snapped back and told him that it was unfair of him to scream at me just because I cursed for spilling coffee. After all, it's not like I cursed at him. He actually apologized then, but I continued to have a slightly low mood, which made him suddenly take back his apology. He then said that I had screamed very loudly when dropping the coffee and that he had the right to tell me not to behave in such a way. I said that it was strange that he reacted that way. Wouldn't a normal reaction be to check on me and see what's happening and then have some understanding that I got mad about spilling coffee all over myself? I honestly thought this was absurd and not a thing to fight about. He then proceeded to accuse me of gaslighting and manipulation, as he meant that I had not just shouted out when spilling the coffee, but cursed for a few minutes, which I definitely do not remember doing that. When I told him this, he got angry and said that I was denying the truth and minimizing my blame. We fought some more and then went to sleep. I hate going to sleep without making up first, so I have to admit that I made some noise and some sighs in order for him to come in and comfort me, which definitely was silly and childish childish. I knew he was going to work the next few days, so I could have just gone in the other room and reconciled with him. But I was hurt by what he said and wanted him to apologize first. So I swallowed my pride, went in, we slept the night together, and I made up with him. Or at least I thought I did. The next day I went to the supermarket to pick up some food. He would use this food to make lunch so he could get ready for work. But he still said that he couldn't work as he was too tired. He then got mad that I had kept him up during the night so that he wasn't able to go to work. I apologized and said that I had not slept much either, and I had a big presentation at the university the next day. He then said that he should be mean to me during this day so that I could know how it feels to have to cancel plans because of a fight. I then told him that he was responsible for the fight too, and that I had not slept much either, and that I had to practice for the presentation all day today. So if he wanted to do that, he already had. He then said that he basically was giving me an ultimatum. I could choose him or my presentation tomorrow. The presentation, by the way, is my final exam for everything I've worked on this term. And if I don't make it, I will not be able to continue with my education. I told him that I thought it was sadistic and cruel to make such an ultimatum, as I have worked so hard for this the whole term. And honestly, what would he gain from this? Does he just want me to drop out of my education so he can prove a point? He told me that he has to do this to show me how it feels when you ruin one's day. I told him I didn't want him to miss work, as we did reconcile during the night and as I went shopping for his lunch. I also said that sure, I will be tired if we continue to fight, but I will still go to the presentation because I have to, and he should work as well. But he insists that even if I have the energy to go to my final presentation, and if I do, our relationship is over and he will throw me out of the apartment. What should I do? I know I'm not perfect, and I'm sure I have been annoying, but is this not a very cruel and strange overreaction from him? I would pack my bags that night and go get a hotel. Forget that. This guy is crazy. You do not have to put up with that. This guy's honestly acting as if you are subservient to him. And that's just not how a relationship works. This guy is clearly super toxic. This moron is honestly trying to compare him missing work to you missing your presentation, which by the way is your final grade. This is an easy one. Get out of there and get out of there fast. After 9 years together, I honestly think both of you should be going in the right direction. And it sounds like you have the best interests in mind for him, but he does not care about you one bit. If he loved you, he would not do this. Because this current boyfriend, in my opinion, should become your ex-boyfriend. Your education and your future is on the line. All because this guy wants to be some hothead. And you can bet if you bow down to this last request, he will do this throughout the rest of your life. You're basically giving him permission to be a narcissist, and that's not okay. So get out fast. You can find another place to live, you can find other accommodations. Because this guy does not deserve someone who's ambitious and trying to do something with their future like yourself. My entitled family thinks that they own my car that I bought. So a few years ago, I bought an old car from my dad. He bought a new one, and mine was on its last leg. Since I'm comfortable with that car and I knew that my dad was the only owner, I bought it from him. It's not a pickup nor a van, it's a minivan with a big trunk. You can get loads of stuff in there and even sleep in it if you really needed to. Anyway, since I still live at home, they use my car like it still belongs to them. I've told them many times that I don't like that they just use it whenever they want, but they'll get mad and say I don't do anything, and that the least thing I could do would be to lend my car. Sometimes they ask to use it, and sometimes it's just gone. And this basically ruins any plans that I have. When I tell them no, they'll get passive aggressive and start guilt tripping me, saying stuff like, after everything I've done for you. If my sibling or a friend needs something larger moved, like a shelf or so, they'll use my car. Did you buy new tires, a fridge, or a washing machine? Guess what? They'll use my car to transport it. Maybe my sibling or their drunk friends need to get picked up from a party. Conveniently enough, they need my car because it can fit 6 people in it. Never mind that they called it ugly and that they would never be caught dead driving it. If there's garden waste to dispose of, which car do you think they use? Exactly, they use mine. They try not to make it dirty, but it still gets incredibly dirty, no matter how they use it. Now, I pay for the gas, I pay for the insurance, and all the other stuff that goes along with this car, but it's still not my car. I'm very attached to my belongings, and I treat it well, but it doesn't matter what I say. Since I was a kid, my parents always forced me to share with my siblings. I wouldn't mind letting my siblings or cousins play with my toys if it was my decision, but getting the toy ripped straight out of my hands and and not being allowed to complain about it because they would say how selfish I am, only to then get the toy back but destroyed, is incredibly frustrating. This car is my biggest and most expensive belonging. It's an older model without much technology in it, and I like it that way. I personally don't want to get another car, so I try to treat this well and make it last as long as possible. And today is when I said enough is enough. My aunt called and demanded that my mom drive to her with my car to help her get a carpet. My mom asked me and I say no. My aunt gets incredibly upset and angry and goes, "Why?" First of all, my aunt has a car, but it's currently under repair. She knew about the carpet since 2 weeks, but suddenly this carpet is just absolutely the most important thing in the world while her car is being repaired. Second, the carpet isn't that big. It comes in pieces that fit in any regular car. And third, they have more cars than the one that gets repaired. And they also have a trailer. Why are they going after my minivan? They kept pressuring me and I simply couldn't take it anymore. So I started crying. Why is it always my car? Why can't I have one thing in my life? My sibling gets to have 2 cars in their name, and no one uses these except them. I said if I ever buy another car, I'm gonna get the tiniest car on the market so they can't exploit it and use it. I love my car, but I hate that it's shared so much in my family without me having any say in it. If my dad sold the car to a stranger, they couldn't access it anymore. But this is different because it's my family. I'm so done and I just don't know what to do. That's really unfortunate the way these people are acting, especially since you bought this car. It sounds like the original poster still lives with their family, so they don't have much distance in terms of getting away from them and being able to use this car for themselves. And that's really unfortunate because I totally understand where they're coming from, where they just want some semblance of independence and they don't want everybody breathing down their neck and only using them for that one thing that they have. There's also the idea that they can just start canceling everything underneath this car until it is completely and entirely under their name. Make sure the car's under your name, make sure the insurance is under your name, everything. And if that still doesn't do it, then sell the car and get a new one. I think this person has the right idea of just getting a different car that's smaller that they can use for themselves, because the way their family's acting is really obnoxious. I can understand the occasional favors, but asking constantly and consistently without any kind of care for the person who owns the car is really inconsiderate. And if you got a different car that's much smaller and doesn't have all this room, that will most likely stop them from asking to use your car altogether. Today I messed up by trying to cut my hair myself for the first time. I am terrified of going to the barber because every time I get there, my dad decides to make a scene about whichever haircut I choose, and then forces his 80s haircut on me. I have to have the same haircut he's had for almost 50 years, and so we end up walking out of the barber's looking like twins. Needless to say, going to the barber's quickly became a nightmare for me, since every time I went, I would get the world's worst haircut and would have to bear that for the next 3 months. Not to mention the constant bullying I would always get of looking like my dad's brother rather than his son. Of course, my parents love the haircut, saying how posh it is and how I can grow up and be exactly like my dad, except I don't want to. So today I decided enough was enough and I started watching YouTube tutorial videos on how to cut my hair until I felt like I was a pro barber. Then this afternoon, while my parents were out, I decided to go to the bathroom and start the process. However, a flaw in my plan was that the hair cutter we had didn't work for some reason. So I decided to try the next best thing and use some scissors. I knew it was risky, but after watching those YouTube videos, I felt like I was a pro. I decided to cut my hair one side at a time and began with the right side since I am right-handed for cutting. Surprisingly, this side went perfectly and it was exactly how I wanted it. However, disaster struck when I tried my left side. Since I'm right-handed and my left hand was weaker when it came to cutting, it was harder for me to coordinate which strands of hair I was cutting, and also taking into account using a mirror pretty much for the first time to do this made things quite tricky. Eventually, after removing all the hair I had cut, I realized I had messed up big time. I had accidentally given myself a bald spot the size of a golf ball near the back left side of my head. Whoops! It completely ruined my haircut and I don't know what to do. Since I have realized my mistake, I have taken to wearing a beanie all the time. Even my sister, who was at home, hasn't seen my haircut yet, and I'm terrified of what people are gonna think when they see it. What should I do? I first just want to say that your dad is really weird for making you get a haircut just like his. The original poster in this story is 16 years old. That is an age where you can really easily be obsessed with what people think. And your hair is one of those things that you can't just change every day. Like if you go to school and you wear a bad t-shirt and you get made fun of, guess what? That t-shirt's never seeing the light of day ever again. But if you have a bad haircut, you are stuck with that for months on end, and that can be a terrifying experience. So I don't blame this guy for trying to cut his own hair and to stop looking like his dad. But unfortunately, a bald spot has arrived. You have a few options if you're being realistic. The first option is to pick up a side job to try and get some money, and then to go to a barbershop yourself, pull off your beanie, look at the barber, and say help. And then they can give you a haircut that you want. Your other option is just to hide it, which is probably going to be the harder option, to be completely honest. There's only so long you can go wearing a beanie until someone snatches that off your head, and your golf ball sized bald spot's going to be shining in the sunlight. Your third option, and this one's a little bit riskier, you could just shave your head. This option is super risky because you never know how you're going to look without any hair. On the negative side, you're going to be without hair for quite a while. On the plus side though, this will send a very clear message to your dad that no, I don't want to look like you anymore. But also, you don't have any hair. And this is not something you can take back. Once you cut your hair off, it is gone, and you are stuck like that for a while. So think hard before you pursue this option. But most of all, I wouldn't beat yourself up over this. Like, you gave it an honest try, and you got one side of your head exactly the way you wanted it. You just didn't anticipate using a mirror for your left side with a hand that you're not used to cutting things with. So you were like basically halfway there. I don't know, maybe there's a future for you in being a barber yourself. You could even use your messed up haircut as an excuse to go to the barber and see if they can fix it for free. There's a chance they might help you out, you never know. Especially if you explain that you don't want to look like your dad from the 80s anymore. My girlfriend has trust issues, and it's ruining our relationship. My girlfriend was cheated on nonstop for months during her last relationship, which just so happens to be her first. She hasn't dated anyone since then until me, and this relationship happened 3 or 4 years ago. We have been together now for almost 6 months, so it's still early. Anyways, there was an incident where I forgot about a dating app on my phone, and she found out while we were playing on my phone one night. I genuinely forgot it was there, and she was very upset that night. Eventually, after she calmed down, we moved past it. Then there was another time when we were talking about our day. She had work and I had off, and I left out some details about some of the things that went on that day. Stuff like where I was and where I went. I wasn't doing anything I didn't want her to know about, but later on that day, she saw I went to other places. She wasn't mad, but I can tell it just scared her a bit. It wasn't made into a big deal. Then a couple of days ago, while she was cleaning, she found an anime drawing from my ex's best friend, and it happened to be a drawing of a girl for my birthday. She didn't say anything about it to me, but I overheard her talking to her best friend about it, and I'm worried the gears in her head are starting to turn. Now, a couple of days ago, we got Life 360 together because I have to drive across town for work early, and this is a good way for her to know where I am and for her to just know that I made it to work. Well, sometime today, she must have been looking through my drive history for the day, and it said I stopped at a random house for an hour. She vaguely mentioned it and is now very quiet. Frankly, I truly am not doing anything wrong, and it's just driving me up a wall to constantly be questioned. I feel like her trust issues are going to ruin this relationship, and honestly, I'm sick of it. What should I do? It seems like the guy in this situation is not doing enough to really put his girlfriend at ease. His current girlfriend got cheated on so many times for months and she had no idea. So do you really blame her for being suspicious of these incidents? In her mind, she's thinking, oh wow, the same thing that happened in my other relationship is happening again. And while I totally believe you that this is all situational, it also is not a good look. In my opinion, you need to do more to prove that you are not cheating on her. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you really need to try a little bit harder. From her perspective, it's probably really suspicious that the Life 360 app suddenly just happens to break next to a house for an hour. If I was in her shoes, I probably would think the same thing, like, hey, he's probably cheating on me just like my previous boyfriend. I'm also very surprised that this location-based tracking app is glitching for some reason. I have never heard of that app specifically breaking down in such a way where it says that you were at a random house for an hour. I honestly am not sure if you're telling the complete truth here. If I was in your shoes and my girlfriend said, hey, you stopped at this random house for an hour, I would immediately jump in the car with my girlfriend and we would go to that house. If I really cared about my girlfriend, I would do everything I possibly can to prove to her, no, I am not cheating on you. I am loyal to you. I'm doing everything I can to be with you. But that's just my opinion. What is your opinion though? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear it. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.